I can turn it on. Okay, hello. Good afternoon and welcome to the second meeting of the Joint Interim Standing Committee on Legislative Operations and Elections for the 2025-2026 interim. Mr. Gibbs, can you please call the roll?
Senator Daly. Here. Vice Chair Orenshaw. Senator Steinbeck.
Here.
Assemblymember Dickman.
Here.
Assemblymember Hibbets. Assemblymember Moore.
Here.
Assemblymember Mosca. And Chair Gonzalez.
Here. Thank you so much. I do know that members are running late, but should all be present. So can you please mark them present when they arrive? Members who are joining us on Zoom, please remember to keep your video on and your microphone off when you are not speaking. And please remember to use the chat feature only for technical assistance from our AVH staff. Before we begin, I would like to remind us of a few housekeeping announcements. Please silence all electronic devices, including your cell phones. When speaking, please turn the microphone off each time you are done speaking. Agenda items may be taken out of order, combined, or postponed. Members of the public, if you would like to receive email notifications when meeting materials, including agendas, are posted on the committee's webpage, you can sign up for notifications on the Nevada Legislature's website. Meeting materials received prior to the meeting have been uploaded to the committee's webpage. And finally, you might see some of us on our phones and laptops following along with presentations and taking notes. Please do not take this as a sign of disrespect. We'll start with our first agenda item today, which is public comment. Members of the public can provide testimony in person, over the phone, via email, or by mail. Instructions are provided on the agenda. If you are testifying in person, please remember to sign in at the table by the door. And please remember to clearly state and spell your name before you begin and limit your comment to 2 minutes. Staff will time each speaker during public comment to ensure everyone has a fair opportunity to speak. If you would like to provide public comment over the phone, the number is 888-475-4499, and the meeting ID for today is 834-5827-0496, and then press the pound key. We will start in Las Vegas. If anybody would like to make public comment, please come to the table now. Not seeing anyone. Is there anyone wishing to provide public comment in Carson City? Also not seeing anyone. AVH, let's go to the phones. Is there anybody who wishes to make public comment on the phone?
Thank you, Chair. If you would like to participate in public comment, please press *9 now to take your place in the queue.
Good afternoon. My name is Ellen Gifford, E-L-L-E-N, G as in George, I-double-F as in Frank, O-R-D as in David. Nevada Secretary of State stated, "It will still give me chills. This bill was passed with urgency when addressing NRS 293705 in 2024. In part, the law reads it is unlawful for any person to use or threaten or attempt to use any force, intimidation, coercion, violence, restraint, or undue influence with the intent to interfere with the performance of the duties of any elections official. Violators of this law are guilty of a Category E felony." In his description of the bill in February 2025, the Secretary of State said, "There was a sharp decline in the threat and harassment that election officials experienced in the 2024 election cycle, inferring this was due to the new law. A Nevada voter curious about what prompted the need for such a law sent a FOIA request to the Secretary of State in each Nevada county, asking for any records documenting incidents such as those listed in the law. 15 recipients responded they had no such records. 2 recipients responded they had a few threatening emails and phone calls, hardly warranting a law that puts every voter at risk of being accused of a felony. Ironically, the Secretary of State has been sending regular memorandums to the requester since December 2023, 2.5 years, saying they need more time to provide evidence of the incidents that have been giving the Secretary of State chills. We must ask, was there evidence that warranted a caustic law that puts all voters at risk? If so, are they ever going to share it with the public? Nevadans deserve to exercise their right to vote in a patriotic, friendly atmosphere. This law discourages such an atmosphere, and there appears to be no justification for its existence.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate it. AVH, next caller, please.
Good afternoon. This is Oscar Williams, Oscar Williams, calling from Reno. Hello. I sent you guys an email yesterday. It's got 4 points. I don't want to belabor everybody with it, but I want to just highlight one thing. There's, we have changed our method of voting, where before we were using direct recording equipment with a little voters verifiable audit paper trail tape add-on, right? And now we have the statewide, the ballot marking device with a precinct scanner. There's a lot of laws on the books right now that refer to the obsolete direct recording equipment. And so I implore this board and the Secretary of State to do a little homework to clean up these old laws. And I'll give you two real quick to sort of give an example of it. NRS 2933677, Standards for Counting Votes Regulations. Shall adopt regulations, statewide standards for counting a vote cast for each method of voting, not described in subsection 2, without limitation, a vote cast on a mechanical recording device which directly records the votes electronically. That's the DRE, right? That we no longer have. NRS 293B033, mechanical voting system defined, point 1, on a device which mechanically or electronically compiles a total of the number of votes cast. Again, that refers to the DRE, which is now obsolete. So there's a lot of this that's now garbage in our laws that has to be cleaned out. Otherwise, it's fairly incomprehensible when we talk about ballot marking devices and precinct scanners. The language gets very confused by these latent terms. That's all I wanted to highlight at this time. I may make some comment at the end. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. AVH, are there any more callers?
Chair, you have no more callers wishing to participate at this time.
Thank you so much. Seeing no more public comment, we will now move on to our next agenda item, which is approval of the minutes from our meeting on February 20th, 2026. Committee members, you've all had time to review the minutes. Are there any questions or comments? Seeing none, I will accept a motion to approve the minutes for the meeting on February 20th, 2026.
So moved.
Thank you. I have a motion from Senator Vice Chair Ornschall. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a second from Assembly Member Moore. Sorry. Thank you. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Next, I would like to invite our representatives of the Office of the Secretary of State to the table to provide information on the status of preparing for our upcoming primaries. Mr. Secretary, whenever you're ready, please go ahead.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Chair Gonzalez and members of the committee. Thank you very much for having us here today to talk about our preparations for the June primary. For the record, I'm Secretary of State Cisco Aguilar. Before Chief Deputy Murphy Hebert and Deputy Mark Balashian take over to discuss how our state, county, and city election officials are preparing, I wanted to talk with you about a number of initiatives we've taken to encourage people to vote and increase the trust with the public. Elections officials have been getting ready for the upcoming election since the day after the election in 2024. This preparation doesn't start at the beginning of an election year, it's ongoing. The work to keep our elections safe, secure, and accessible is a year-round job. And I'm very proud to work alongside the SOS team and election workers in the state to run some of the best elections in the country. Across every initiative in our office, we focused on three main goals: modernization, innovation, and transparency. I'm excited for Deputy Velashan to show you a glimpse of the new dashboard we're creating for voters to significantly increase the transparency in Nevada. I've said it before, and it seems to be very simple, but voters should be able to track their ballots like they do a pizza. We know where a pizza is every step of the way, from when it's being prepared, when it's put in the oven, and when it's being delivered. People demand that kind of information in real time. I want to highlight two efforts to increase transparency into our mail ballots. One is the dashboard, which will give us real-time data on the status of mail ballots across the state. How many ballots have been sent out by the counties? How many have been accepted for counting? How many have signature clear issues, and more? The data will be able to be broken down by party and county. Deputy Velashan will give more in-depth breakdown in just a few minutes. We are also launching myballot.nv.gov for voters to directly track their ballot. We've offered ballot tracking for the last couple of cycles, but this year we're working to give voters more information about the status of their ballot, including if it needs to be cured. This has been a big focus of ours, to try to decrease the number of ballots that eligible voters cast, but don't end up being counted because they don't cure it with the local election office. Deputy Velashan will also discuss our voter education and outreach preparation when it comes to the possible changes to elections processes this year, and address a number of questions and misinformation being spread about our elections. He will discuss our efforts to encourage voters to make a plan and get their ballots in the mail at least a week before Elections Day, or use a drop box on Election Day as we approach changes with the United States Postal Service. I want to briefly address the noise and misinformation that county continues to spread. Nevada is preparing for the elections as usual, focused on following state law to serve the best interests of every eligible voter across Nevada. Our state is very diverse, as you know. We have a 24/7 economy, many very rural communities, and diverse populations. Accessibility to the ballot box is key to our success as a state. In 2024, Nye County and Douglas County adopted mail ballots at the highest rates. And 86% of all current active registered voters have used a mail ballot since 2022. Our office and election offices in every community are dedicated to protecting the security of our mail ballots and ensuring that voters can make their voices heard in a way that works for them. The chaos and questions that surround the security of our elections is meant to confuse and intimidate voters from participating. They have too many competing priorities going on in their lives, and if they don't understand what's going on or changing with our elections, they'll self-select out. Voters don't deserve the chaos, they deserve leadership. I urge you all as elected officials to take this responsibility seriously and reassure your constituents of the safety and security of Nevada's elections. Before I pass it over to our team, I want to emphasize the hard work that our counties are doing. Election workers are the unsung heroes of our democracy. We need to give elections officials every chance to succeed. That means more resources to do their jobs. As we look ahead to the legislative session, more consistent funding and resources will be crucial. I'll now hand it over to Deputy for Elections, Mark Velashan. Thank you for your time. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. Good afternoon, Chair, members of the committee. Mark Velashan, Deputy Secretary of State for Elections, for the record. Over the next 13 slides, we will talk a little bit about the status of the preparations that have been going on relating to the conduct of the primary election. I have a light agenda, but we will, again, basically provide an overview at first and then dive into some specifics, some of which will be amplified by presentations later today as well. Starting with the executive summary, and I think this is a key point to make. From a very broad stance, the preparations to conduct state and federal elections are going as expected and required by state and federal law. That work, as the Secretary mentioned, began prior to the day after the general election in 2024 and continue today. If you've seen or remember our election calendar, it's a massive 8-point font, 2-page calendar that lays out every statutory and regulatory requirement. We continue to use that as a checklist to make sure that we are hitting every wicket as appropriate. Where we're at now in the elections calendar specifically, and we'll talk to this in a moment also, but the candidate filing periods, of course, are over, and we are rapidly approaching the first votes to be cast by our voters, which will likely happen next week. And again, we'll speak to the timelines here too. And then lastly, the Secretary mentioned voter education outreach. It's an interesting, unique feature, I think, of the elections in the 2020s, starting really after the 2020 election cycle and based on legislative mandate by appropriating funding to support the Secretary's outreach and education efforts. We've continued to provide outreach and education to voters. There's some uniqueness to the 26 election cycle that we'll talk to as well. Different things that we want to make sure that you're aware of, that we are not only thinking about how to address in the events that they pass, but also how we've been answering the questions from your constituents. So to start with a discussion about the candidate filing period, I want to provide a little bit of an overview. Again, there were roughly 1,100 candidates through the judicial and non-judicial filing periods that filed for office across our 36 filing offices, the 36 being, of course, the Secretary of State's office, our 17 county offices, and then the 18 city offices as well. I've got the statistics for not only our representatives in Congress, constitutional officers, and legislature on the next slide, but a couple things just to highlight of note. The numbers in bold on this slide indicate that there is going to be a primary election, of course, with our constitutional officers. Not every individual that filed for office, again, this is something that oftentimes we get questions about already. Not every single individual that filed, for example, for CD2 goes on a primary ballot. As you can see, we have 4 no political party candidates who are independent candidates for partisan office who have filed for office, and they, of course, go directly to the general election ballot. Constitutional officers, again, very similar in regards to the number of candidates from the election cycle 4 years ago as well. Again, also with the bold indicating they're going to the primary. For the legislative seats, I didn't break down all of the assembly seats or the 11 state Senate seats that are on the ballot as well. We have that information, of course, on our website. I do want to flag, though, that when it comes to the constitutional officers and the legislature, legislative candidates, rather, we do get questions from constituents asking how they can learn more about each candidate. That is information, of course, that is not housed on the Office of the Secretary of State page, and we continue as appropriately to direct those individuals to either the candidates themselves or to the political parties who provide additional information on the candidates' positions on various topics. But again, those questions come up, but we simply redirect away from our information. Regarding these sample ballot timelines, again, there was a recent change to Assembly Bill 148 that was passed during the last legislative session. As a reminder, that bill requires that all sample ballots be sent prior to the deadlines established for mail ballots. There are 3 categories of voters that are identified under NRS 293, 2699, 11 as receiving a ballot at different time periods. I have them listed on the slide. The first ones, as I mentioned, will be getting their mail ballots sent to them and their sample ballots as well, starting next week. The military and overseas citizens, those voters who are covered under the Uniformed and Overseas Citizen Absentee Voting Act, the federal act, or are identified as covered voters under NRS 293D, again, as being military overseas citizens, sample ballots go out next week. Out of state, 5 days later, for those deadlines, and then in-state shortly thereafter. You'll notice that there's a range of dates. Again, not only are those range of dates lined up so that the sample ballots are going across the state out prior to the mail ballots being shipped, they are slightly different, in part due to different vendors for different sample ballots in different counties. And there's also, it's kind of interesting, just a little bit of behind the scenes, a bit of a sweet spot when it comes to sending sample ballots or mail ballots. Truth be told, not every voter in our state is aware that it's an election year. Some of them may not have taken time to update their voter registrations. So at the county level, again, knowing their electorate best, there's sort of a balance where they try to wait until the last minute so that voters can update their registrations and are aware of the election. So that way they're not wasting county or state money sending sample ballots and ballots to the incorrect addresses, while also still, of course, complying with the statutory requirements and deadlines. So there's an outreach balance and a timing piece to make sure that voters are aware of the election and update their registrations so that sample ballots and mail ballots are being sent to the proper addresses and not needing to be reissued or canceled. Note there about the sample ballots not being required for newly registered voters after May 21. Of note, and one clarification, it's not required, but you'll notice also that the in-state sample ballots, again, at the county level, I will tell you that the county election officials are keenly aware of the importance of sample ballots to our voters, which is why even as late as May 9th, individuals will be getting sent sample ballots, and we of course provide them online as well. So it's not that newly registered voters after the 21st of May aren't getting anything. There are still online and opportunities for them to be able to see the sample ballot, review it, and consider it as appropriate. Mail ballot timelines, again, very similarly, and again, to be just perfectly clear about it, nobody is holding up the sending of mail ballots by design at all. The intent is so that the mail ballot timelines are really the key date, and then sample ballots are, of course, going to be sent before that. But there is a sequencing issue. I think it's also worthy to note that we've identified that given some of the challenges that the U.S. Postal Service is going through this year, there is always the possibility, and this is something that we've basically taken into consideration, that a sample ballot that is sent first and a mail ballot that's sent a couple days later may still arrive at the voter's house in the opposite order. Again, something that we're trying to watch very closely of. We're, again, very aware of the statutory requirements, but doing basically as much as we can to separate the two so sample ballots go out long enough before mail ballots, so that if there are issues from the Postal Service perspective, that does not somehow inhibit the voter from getting a sample ballot before a mail ballot. Still, that being said, if it happens 1 in a million times, then at least twice in our state, which isn't ideal, but something that we've already taken into consideration and started discussing that we're going to watch closely on. The mail ballot timelines, again, slightly different, of course. But I've included the deadlines on here as well so that you can see when those mail ballots will be going out. Again, the variation, of course, being, as I mentioned, that sort of sweet spot that the county election officials are trying to hit so that voters can update their registrations while meeting, of course, the statutory deadlines and timelines. The Nevada E-System, our effective absentee system for elections, again, required by federal law that we distribute our UOCAVA military and overseas ballots not later than the 45th day before the election. UOCAVA Saturday, as it's called, is not this Saturday, but next. And the Friday before that, under state law, is actually the 46th day before the election, and that's the deadline for our military and overseas ballots to be sent. The NVE system uses that same deadline and will be turned on ultimately next week. And again, we've noticed historically that EASE system, again, which is intended for use by military and overseas voters, as well under state law, voters with a disability, and tribal voters who live on a colony or a reservation. The voters who have used it historically, again, are oftentimes big fans, and I suspect that historically it's been within about a half hour of us turning it on that the first voter has voted using that system, casting their ballot so that it ends up at the county for duplication in the beginning of the processing period. But again, that will be the EASE system will be turned on essentially next week. We are getting some questions again for clarification about who can use it. Trying to understand, voters have heard that state law has expanded its use in the last few legislative sessions, which is true from starting back in 21. So for clarification, again, it's the active duty members of the uniformed services, and I think that confuses some individuals. It's not strictly individuals who are in the Army, Navy, Air Force, Marine Corps, Coast Guard, or Space Force that are on active duty. But for example, again, activated Guards members are absolutely allowed to use it once they are on active orders. It's also open for use by members of the Merchant Marine. They fall under the Uniformed Services umbrella, as does the Commissioned Corps of the National Oceanographic and Atmospheric Agency, NOAA, and the Public Health Service, which is really interesting. We've actually conducted some outreach to inform Nevadan voters who are members of the Public Health Service, the Commissioned Corps of the Public Health Service, who are eligible to use the system. As I recall, between 4 and 10 individuals that we identified. It's also eligible for use by voters who are overseas citizens, and then, as I mentioned, Nevada voters who have a disability, and lastly, tribal voters who live on a colony or reservation as well in Nevada. In regards to the polling place update, I'll start with the polling place update and then very similarly shift to a mail ballot drop box update on the next slide. We're at a point now where the county election officials are basically just about done finalizing their list of polling places. Some actually have done it since this slide deck was provided to the LCB staff. Again, keeping in mind, and just to highlight what that process looks like, the polling places across the state, and we get questions about this too, why they change sometimes. Well, it's important to note that a lot of those are established, if they're not a county or a city office, that they're established through contracts. Certain locations, there was a grocery store, for example, in one of our counties that had about 9 polling places a couple years ago, and then just decided they didn't want to support polling places anymore. I'm specifically not calling them out. Maybe I should. But that sort of decision happens across our state. And oftentimes, again, from an election administrator standpoint, we're keenly aware that folks like consistency of going to vote in the same place. And when polling places change, that can cause confusion, frustration, which is very much understandable. So to try to mitigate that, of course, the county election officials will put the list of polling places into sample ballots. We'll also be on state, county, and city websites to make sure that individuals know where their nearest polling place is at as they get ready to vote in person, if that's, again, what they desire to do. There's also a question about turnout when it comes to a midterm election. When you look at turnout overall, historically, midterm elections have the lowest turnout, and historically, a primary election of a midterm year has the extreme lowest turnout, unfortunately, of all of our elections. That being said, this year, after a lot of discussion, our county election officials have indicated that they are not going to reduce. They don't, again, from what I'm aware of, they don't anticipate reducing the number of polling places. Given a lot of the interest voters have shown in the last few election cycles, it seems like there's still likely going to be pretty high turnout this year, both in the primary and general elections. So, again, better to be prepared and have the polling places to support the electorate. So our number of polling places will likely, again, when I get it, I will certainly provide that, be closer to a general election of a presidential year than you might normally expect. We also, and I'll talk about a little bit about the extensive analysis and trends following the primary in general here in a minute, but I did want to provide, you'll notice the chart on the slide. This is actually from the 2024 Federal Election Administration and Voting Survey, the EVES report, as it's affectionately known. These are the specific numbers that we report to the federal government about how many polling places, and the counties provide data that gets aggregated about the number of poll workers, and we'll talk about poll workers shortly also. I provided this simply to give you a little bit of context as to where we fall amongst our neighbors. And there's some interesting kind of points of view here. One, again, our friends to the west, again, a vast number of polling places, larger population, increased number of poll workers, but really, the comparison I think that it's important is that the decisions that are made relating to the polling places, again, are driven by our county election officials who, as I will continue to say, truly know their electorate and understand where the population centers are, where people have voted historically. Is there room for improvement and further discussion? Certainly as our state continues to grow. I mean, we were 1.4 million registered voters even just a couple of years ago, and now we're up to over 2 million. Absolutely. And we anticipate that those number of polling places will continue to be reviewed and discussed to make sure that we are meeting voters where they're at. We've talked about, not only in this committee and during the legislative session, how voters like using mail ballots. A sizable percentage of our electorate votes by mail, but we still have a lot of voters that vote in person during the in-person period for early voting, as well as during the 12 hours on Election Day. And again, the goal, as I understand it from the legislative intent, as I listened closely to the discussions, is to make sure that we enable voters to vote how they choose. So to that end, again, the number of polling places, the locations of polling places, population centers and otherwise will continue to be assessed and discussed. I do want to call out also, just to save anybody the phone call or email, Oregon, of course, is 100% vote by mail. They do have 36 counties, which is why they have 36 polling places. Kind of an interesting aside. But for the mail ballot drop boxes, again, very similar. Under Nevada law, every polling place must have a drop box, but county election officials are able to establish additional drop boxes at additional locations that are not a polling place. So because of that, again, here are similar statistics out of the Eves report from 2024. Again, I know firsthand that our county election officials are looking very closely at where ballot drop boxes are, how they can be positioned to best meet the needs of the electorate, oftentimes comparing them to public transportation routes, and other type locations to make sure that where the electorate is and transits through are supported by drop boxes, again, which is very much the intent. The extensive analysis and voting trends, and perhaps I'll get a little bit ahead of myself here. Well, I'll tell you, I'll wait to the dashboard slide. I'm excited about that one. Okay, voter education and outreach. So as the Secretary mentioned, a lot of time and effort has been spent on voter education and outreach. This is something, again, as we've talked about over the years, has been supported very much, appreciated by the legislature and the governor. You may remember back in as recently as 2020, the Elections Division budget for voter education and outreach was $0. It has grown since then, and in the 23 session, it was $877,000. In the 25 session, we were appropriated $1.4 million. Again, these are decisions that the legislature has made and the governor supported through his budget to make sure that voters have truthful information that are just the facts. Again, as I stressed from the start, this is not partisan discussions about candidates or ballot questions. This is strictly information about how our laws work, the audits that we conduct, how the systems are reviewed and approved before they get to you, the voter, at a polling place. All of those things to make sure that the electorate has an opportunity across every corner of our state to understand it. So to that end, again, in recognizing the importance and the care that we put into using any single tax dollar period for anything, we have been making some significant efforts to inform the electorate about how our elections are conducted, and while also addressing a lot of the questions that they bring to us. The first one that I want to talk about is actually the one I mentioned before, the U.S. Postal Service. They have come out even fairly recently and identified that they may be completely bankrupt, possibly next year, maybe by the end of this year. That by itself has caused a lot of questions and concerns that I know our federal delegation are aware of as well, given the importance of mail ballot voting to, essentially voters in all of our counties. Again, it's not just one or a select few. But understanding the impact of the Postal Service's budgetary stress has certainly led to a lot of ongoing conversations. When you think about the Postal Service also and their reliance on vehicles to bring mail pieces and ballots and sample ballots, and understanding the rising costs of gas and how that impacts their budget, we are now taking the position that we very much encourage voters to use a mail ballot drop box at a polling place. Or if you are going to mail a ballot back, to do it, as the Secretary mentioned, not later than 1 week beforehand. There's a couple different pieces of that, calculus that are kind of coming together to lead to that sort of recommendation. But the bottom line is, again, a U.S. citizen, Nevada voter who is a registered voter who wants to vote by mail, again, has the ability to use the Postal Service. But given, again, some of the questions about timing to get that ballot from the voter to their county election official, it's a bit alarming. There were some very recent, in fact, studies done on California just recently in some of their elections. Since the U.S. Postal Service transitioned to their Regional Transportation Optimization Plan, the RTO plan, upwards of 4 times as many ballots were being rejected because of late delivery, in part because of some of these, again, federal decisions that were being made as in regards to what the Postal Service has available to them from a capabilities and budgetary standpoint. So again, when in doubt, we encourage voters to bring their mail ballot to the county election official office or to use a mail ballot drop box at a polling place. Or if they are going to mail it back, we encourage them to mail it back no later than 1 week before Election Day to ensure that ballot arrives. We get questions about Watson v. RNC. This is a lawsuit that is at the U.S. Supreme Court now. The main question, and again, just a reminder, I'm not a lawyer, but the main question of this lawsuit is it constitutional for a mail ballot to be received after Election Day? We anticipate the decision coming from that in late June. And we have had numerous discussions on basically the what ifs in both direction. If the Supreme Court says, yes, it's acceptable, it has been acceptable for a number of years, and they continue that decision, then everything will remain as is, but still informing the voters about that is important. But if the Supreme Court comes back and says that it is illegal or unconstitutional, rather, to accept a mail ballot after Election Day, we've started to discuss what that would look like from an outreach standpoint as well. Again, the timing there is key, late June, so this would, of course, be after the primary. If they surprise us and issue their decision the first week of June, that will create additional confusion and opportunities for us to stress our outreach efforts to get information to voters. But again, it is, I think, safely assessed that it will be coming in late June. So again, one way or the other, informing voters of that decision prior to the general election will be crucial. There was an executive order that the president signed also just a few months ago. We continue to get questions about that, if it's been implemented yet, if it's not. There were questions about how that would go. Again, to be perfectly clear, the executive order is not in force or in execution. It's my understanding that there are some lawsuits against different provisions that have or will be filed. There is actually one I know for a fact that our state has filed. So again, the questions about the executive order, it was interesting. There's an overlap here in Carson City, in fact. A voter reached out the other day. Carson City has a really unique, and this is not at all a problem, it's just a super interesting, I think, situation where because of which candidates filed for office in Carson City does not have a nonpartisan ballot this year. One candidate filed for office, others they didn't have anyone and went to an appointee, that sort of thing. But for the 14,800 nonpartisan voters in Carson City, myself included, for example, like we do not get a mail ballot for the primary because there simply isn't a race at all to have on a ballot. But we got questions that from at least one or two that I recall, individuals asking if that was somehow related to either the executive order or the Supreme Court. So again, trying to clarify that this is simply how the state law works and the number of candidates that filed in Carson City. We continue to work very closely with Clerk Cohen and his team to provide that information to the voters in Carson City, the nonpartisan folks, because you can imagine also, right, for the 14,800 nonpartisan voters in Carson, if they show up to vote in person on Election Day or during early voting, it's not that they're being denied the ability to vote. There's just simply no ballot for which they can vote without changing their political party. So trying to clarify that and make sure they understand that the nuance of state law and the options they have available to them will continue to be a challenge as well. We've gotten questions also about Question 7. Question 7 is a ballot question. Of course, it was a constitutional initiative petition originally on our general election ballot in November of 2024. When it passed in November of 24, we've gotten questions, why aren't you doing it yet? Again, so we've been working to explain to voters that they do ask about that again, those sorts of constitutional petitions have to be on the general election ballot twice, and the timing for that. The idea that because it passed in November of 24, it will be on the ballot again in November of 26. And then if it does not pass that vote by the voters, it simply dies. If it does pass that vote by the voters, it will go to the 2027 legislative session for further discussion and creation of a statutory structure for implementation prior to the 28 election cycle. So we continue to inform voters about just the nature of statutory and constitutional initiative ballot questions and petitions in general. We continue also on top of those, questions just that are perhaps more routine about dates and times and methods to update voter registrations. Again, we're consistently reminded about the transient nature of our state and how many folks across the country and world really are continuing to make the excellent decision to move to Nevada and move out of what other state or country they had been in previously. And that continues to lead to a lot of questions about just how our electoral process works that, again, we know our county and city partners continue to answer questions as well as at the state as we lead up to the June 9th primary. That strategic planning of communication, one of the bottom bullet points also, the way we do that, and again, this really speaks to the careful use of the budget. And I know this isn't the budget committee, but just so that you're aware, we're very careful on how we are communicating and who and where. Ideally, we're communicating directly with voters. That will and it remains always the best option. Meeting voters where they're at, in person, being able to ask questions, to not speak in a kind of even something as simple as a monotone voice talking about the dates and times. When you talk about elections, like you gotta be into it. You gotta want to talk about it. Otherwise, you're gonna put everybody asleep. So trying to meet voters where they're at, so you can answer questions, bring up topics, and be approachable. And that's again truly one of the best benefits that we have with our county and city election partners, who know their communities and who are out there very much working side by side with advocate groups and others to get answers to voters about, again, just how things function. We at the state continue to do so as well. Also, north, south, east, and west, engaging through community leaders and events, large and small, to make sure that, again, every opportunity that we have, whether it's, again, a 90-plus-year-old voter in one corner of the state or somebody who just turned 18 yesterday and is curious about how the process works and how to register or pre-register for 17-year-olds. Again, there's no end to the amount of information that we can provide and should to make sure that the electorate is informed and prepared for the election cycle. We are also exploring this time, and this is another one of Secretary Aguilar's initiatives relating to modernization and innovation, the use of email and text campaigns. We have also looked very closely and had a number of different discussions about, what are the right ways to conduct an email or text campaign to maximize the effect. I think we all get messages, but the goal is to make sure that the right messages are going to the right voters. So there's a number of outreach efforts that we're looking at to, again, make sure that voters understand how to update voter registrations, where they can ask questions. The Carson City example about nonpartisan ballot and not having one for the primary is a good example. There's a lot of ongoing discussion and collaboration with the Carson City clerk about how we can communicate that to voters so they know and understand what they can expect when they do show up to the polls in a few very, very short weeks. So our dashboard, very excited to talk about this. So when we talk about the dashboard, I can't help but start by talking about the VREMS project. The VREMS project that was, again, originally passed as a piece of legislation in 2021, Assembly Bill 422, really is the root that has grown into the tree that is now this dashboard. And here's why. We've talked with this body and the legislature about the utility of the VREMS project, how by incorporating everybody onto a single statewide top-down centralized system, there's security, there's voter list enhancements and numbers of other opportunities, in fact, that we'll be covering in actually a follow-on presentation to this one. And all of those are 100% true. But there's another component to this that we have been working on behind the scenes. The simple fact of the matter is that we now have at the state insight into voter registrations in a way that simply we never have at a state level ever before. With Clark County now joining also, and so all 17 counties are on a unified database, the state has the ability to in real time see, for example, if a voter walks into a polling place in Elko, checks in at the poll pad at the desk in Elko, the state will be able to see through our system in real time when that voter has checked in to vote and has gotten vote credit. At the same time, again, in real time, when a voter goes into Lander County and hands their mail ballot to the clerk, and the clerk and her team scan the back of that ballot envelope and mark that ballot as having been received. Again, in real time now, the state has the ability to see that. And as all 2.1 million voters across our state are voting by mail, in person during early voting, or on election day, again, all of that data is at the secretary's fingertips. And his direction to the team has been, if he has access to this information, why wouldn't the public? This will help voters understand what's going on. It'll give them real-time confidence to see what's going on. In having, again, shifting away rather from a once-a-day snapshot of in-person voter turnout, or where are we with mail ballots manually gathering, which I will tell you takes hours and hours to compile as the counties send to the state, and then my team aggregates that data. Instead of having that once a day type snapshot, the ability to have it in real time is something that frankly, again, we haven't seen, and gives us options that are frankly like earth-shattering. And maybe it's just me because I'm an election official and kind of a dork on this stuff, perhaps, but I think you all will appreciate the information as well. So the first mail dashboard, and here's the other thing too, it's not even, this is something we're working on for, the 2030 election. We're going to be releasing these in the next couple weeks. The first dashboard will be focused on mail ballots. And again, it's not a concern about a question of conflict between county data and the state data. We're simply taking the numbers from the centralized database, and you'll see, I guess in retrospect, maybe the slide is a bit smaller than I had hoped. But when you see it on your web browser or your internet browser, it's simply the aggregated data that we have from our database in real time. Across the top, I'm looking at that left thumbnail, I now realize, which is far smaller than I had intended. It will have, for example, the number of total ballots sent across the state. This will reflect all ballots sent, including the reissues. I mentioned that there's a bit of a balance between allowing and waiting for voters to update their registration. Truth be told, we're not going to wait for everyone to update it. Some voters will update their registrations after mail ballots are sent. They won't get their mail ballot. The previous one will either get returned to sender or will oftentimes be destroyed by the now tenants of their previous residence. So they will contact the clerk or registrar and ask for another ballot. That ticker will continue to move in real time as ballots are sent to voters across the state. As the sent ballot, the next line over is received. This simply indicates that a ballot has been received at the county office. When it gets scanned at the county seat, again, this is just the envelope, just simply now in the possession of the county election official, the received line will go up. Hasn't gone through the signature cure process, has not started tabulation, hasn't done any of those other processing pieces. It's simply in the county's possession at the county seat and has been scanned so that the voter has again, started that process with that ballot. The next one over, again, also a little bit small, but as I recall, that is the accepted. So when a ballot is received and it's scanned, it starts going through the process. That process looks similar to validating that the voter has not voted in person or voted twice by another mail ballot. If that's the case, the next thing is to review the signature on the ballot envelope. If that signature matches the ballot envelope, then it gets moved into the accepted, where from that point, the ballot gets deconstructed. It will, if it needs to go to duplication, if it's got mac and cheese on the ballot, which happens, or other substances, then it'll get, and it can't be tabulated. It'll go to duplication. Otherwise, it will work its way over to tabulation. The fourth box on the right over there, again, is the number of cures. This is in real time as a ballot is identified for needing a signature cure. We're also going to have a toggle to identify how many ballots have been cured. And again, it's not estimates. This isn't, county election officials in the state late at night, making phone calls. This is simply, if in the system it says that this is how many ballots need a cure, period. And then the far right, is the outstanding, the remaining number of ballots out there. Because this is our database and because it's tied so closely to what we do across the state, when a voter checks in person in, again, Eureka, to vote in person, the system instantly cancels their mail ballot. The outstanding ballots on this dashboard then will tick down one. Their ballot's no longer outstanding. They voted in person. They don't have a mail ballot that's going to be tabulated. It will either have been surrendered by the voter or is not votable. So again, that information, starting with that across the top dashboard, going down into details, simply reflecting the county data in a way that frankly will enable them to focus more on supporting the needs of the voters and the election in front of them, but also ensuring that the public, the press, the parties, everybody across the board, across our state, will have access to information, again, that isn't an estimation, isn't a state level guess. It's simply taking the data that the VREMS project has made possible and providing that to you, the voter. We're starting small with the intent to build to the general. There's a number of other dashboards that we're looking very closely at as well and actually are under development. There's also an ease submissions dashboard that will reflect in this one, the mail ballot one does as well. If you scroll down a little bit, you'll see it actually breaks it down by county, by party as well, with the two major parties and then the non-partisan and other minor parties also getting aggregated together so that you can see those statistics. And again, this is just simply right out of the database, but we'll have an ease ballot submissions dashboard is the second one. That will also have it broken down by active duty, military, and spouses, voters with a disability, tribal voters who live on a colony or reservation. The third one, we also are going to have an in-person turnout one, very similar to the in-person turnout dashboards that you've seen before. Again, just simply reflecting by party who in the counties has voted. Then there's two other dashboards that we're looking at that really aren't related to the election, I'll say, but we're, again, in the interest of transparency, looking closely at having, this is probably, truth be told, post-general election, but a list maintenance dashboard so you can see in real time the incredible amount of work that our county clerks and registrars are doing for list maintenance, as well as voter statistics. The idea that we right now we do a monthly snapshot, but we have the ability to show you in real time how many people voted, or I'm sorry, how many people registered to vote by party in every county across the state. So again, a lot of this really just goes back to the idea that we have data available that is, as you can see, statistics that is truly statewide, down to the county and really precinct level data. And the goal from the secretary through our staff is to make sure that that data is reflected and available so that again, our basically the entirety of the electorate, but also those who aren't voters can look at it and understand not only the nature of how Nevadans vote, but when and the how, of course, is our election results, but like when, where, all of these different things. And it also enables our county election officials to, in closing here, because I'll probably talk about this for a better part of a couple hours, but when you think about the analysis, right, we talked about the importance of polling places. They're going to be able to see which polling places do get used, which contracts maybe don't need to be nearly as much as they could be, or where are the hot spots, across the precincts that we want to identify additional polling places, maybe just for early voting. So it's really going to give a lot of insight into the election administration across our state, so that administrators, again, can have serious conversations using data to back up budgetary requests when appropriate, but otherwise meeting the needs of the electorate so that they can vote, again, however they choose to under our state and federal laws.
Thank you, Mark, Madam Chair, and members of the committee. Happy to answer any questions.
It's this microphone. Or maybe it's user error. I do know that there is a question. Members have questions. We'll start in the north with Senator Daly.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And a couple of questions. Just want to make sure I'm clear. And I think you've communicated a great deal of information, and it all, to me at least, seems relatively clear. What I want to kind of know is, and I know there's like 3 executive orders out there from the president, the most recent one, but we're currently going to be following state law as it exists in Nevada, absent one Supreme Court decision you expect after the primary election. To my knowledge, Congress has not taken any action that would take some of that authority to the feds that's still left to the states per the United States Constitution. And we're going to be just following state law up until somebody tells us we can't anymore and there's actually action by Congress or a court case that changes our process. Is that correct?
Madam Chair, through you to Senator Daly, Cisco-led Secretary of State, you are correct, Senator. Nevada is engaged in litigation on both executive orders, and so we'll continue to operate under current state law and federal law. Once the Supreme Court hands down its opinion in June, depending on what that opinion says, that is the final law of the land, and we will implement it here in Nevada. But it doesn't mean we haven't started preparations for one way or the other. We want to make sure we implement as smoothly as possible to lessen the impact on voters across the state.
Understood. And the other half of the question, the other question has to do with a different executive order. My understanding. So we have the Constitution says the states do the election law. The state has its election law. Congress has taken no action to change that. So the executive orders really have no enforcement ability, or basically, how do I want to say it? I'm not always kind, but the deranged rantings of a madman, right? All that stuff aside, how is the one executive order, if any impact at all, where it says we're supposed to validate these people, we're supposed to turn over voter information to the feds? I know the state has said we're not doing that, and they're in litigation over that. They're suing us, actually, to get that information. So we're going to follow our state laws. We're going to mail it to every registered voter. Is the post office or is the Postal Service going to accept all of the ballots that we send? Or is there going to be some type of an issue where they said, well, we haven't verified this, so we're not going to accept your ballots and process them? Or is the post office indicated that all of that's pending and we're going to stay the course and follow what the rules are now?
Madam Chair, through to Senator Daley. Cisco Aguilera, Secretary of State. For the record, the United States Postal Service will continue to operate as it's operated in previous elections until told otherwise by law or individuals or court cases. We've been in constant contact with the United States Postal Service. We have continued to work with them. And just a point of information on the second executive order as it relates to the United States Postal Service, Nevada is in compliance with a majority of those requests that are in the executive order. Every single mail ballot in Nevada has a unique identifier that is identified to that ballot. It is part of the security of the overall system. And we do work with the Postal Service on the actual design of the mail ballot, because we want to make sure that we are as efficient with them as they are with us, so we can continue to see we want mail ballots to get where they're intended to go, and we want them to be returned in a way that we can track them, which is also part of the security, to ensure that we are as transparent with Nevada voters as possible. So the post office will continue to operate as they have until they're told otherwise. They have not informed us of any operational changes. There is actually a conference that is taking place in Phoenix in early May with election leaders and elections administrators to continue to talk about the ways that we can work together to build efficiencies in the process. The only change that we are experiencing with the United States Postal Service at the moment is the postmark, and which we've already continued to work with our office and the local county clerks and city clerks to ensure that we are messaging to voters the appropriate message that if you're going to mail your ballot, mail it in early. If you're going to wait till election day to use a mail ballot, drop it off at a polling location in a drop box.
And thank you for that. I just wanted to make sure that for people, anybody listening, nothing has really changed despite the executive orders, because the states under the Constitution have the authority. We have our laws. There's been no court decisions on that. And much of what was in the executive orders are, they're not valid. They don't have any teeth because the president unilaterally isn't Congress. He can't do it. And I know the postmark issue. I think we had presentation on it last meeting, working through there are other ways for you to figure out when it came into the possession at the post office, and then, of course, pending the Supreme Court decision. So I think that's all of my questions, Madam Chair. I just wanted to be clear on that. Wanted everybody else to be clear, is that we have a system that's worked well. We have a process that's been vetted and been used many times and constantly improving in compliance with all state and federal laws. And they should have confidence in what the state of Nevada is doing in our election process and the outcomes therefrom. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Our next question comes from Assemblymember Mosca.
Thank you so much, Chair. Thank you so much, Secretary and the team. I think these dashboards are going to make a huge difference for everybody in our state. And I believe because it's on VREMS, it's not more work for our clerks because it automatically comes up with a top-down system. So I think that's really exciting. My question was really around, I know yesterday we had a long conversation about the HAVA grant at Interim Finance Committee, and thank you for the updates on the federal side. Just wanted to know if there was any other examples of the federal government trying to take our funds when it comes to elections.
Madam Chair, through you to Assembly Member Mosca, thank you for the question. You are absolutely correct. The whole point of this is to build transparency into the process. We are doing demos with folks. I encourage you, if you'd like to see the system live before it goes out publicly, we love your feedback. We love your perspective. We are meeting with outside groups on both sides of the aisle to get their feedback because we do want this to be a good tool. We want it to be a useful tool and have the information that people want. Again, one of the data points that I want in there is mail ballots that are in the possession of the United States Postal Service as well, so people can see where the ballots are as they lead up to the actual processing at the counties. As far as the HAVA grant, it's unfortunate what happened yesterday. I thought it was pretty detrimental to the state of Nevada and the decisions that IFC made on that issue. That is money that was given to us by the federal government. Unfortunately, it was not our office that made the error. It was another state agency that made an error, and it cost our office and voters access to those resources. Not having that access to those resources at this point in time, I think is pretty detrimental to the voting public in Nevada. And I think it was a bad decision by IFC to not grant those funds to the Secretary of State's office, because again, it was not the Secretary of State's office's fault on that issue, nor was it the federal government's fault on that issue. It was the agency who failed to comply with the federal grant that cost the Secretary of State's office those funds, and therefore the voting public.
Mr. Secretary, Mark Losh for the record. There's one additional, if I may, add to the Assembly member's question. The Homeland Security Grant Program, to your point, Mr. Secretary, has also unfortunately become unavailable. Historically, we've used and back up. So the Homeland Security Grant Program, because it's related to critical infrastructure, has had a requirement for the last few years where a certain percentage had to go to election purposes. The latest version of the grant required 3%, so approximately $130,000 was supposed to be dedicated to elections and supporting physical and cybersecurity of elections across the state, really across the states, again, as a federal grant. Unfortunately, there were some additional requirements levied on that grant, such that we are not legally able to accept that $130,000. One of which the provisions was a requirement to enroll in the SAVE program, which would have meant sending, again, all voter private data to a federal entity who's admitted that they maybe struggle with data security. So that, I think, Assembly Member, is one that I wanted to flag for your awareness.
And thank you, Chair. I know that there's a lot of talk about everything happening in the federal government and how the cuts are impacting us. So I think that's important to get on the record. So thank you.
Thank you so much for the question. Next, we will go to Senator Steinbeck.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And the last information we just got actually gave me two questions, if that's okay with you. Thank you so much. But let me touch first on the grant question, because I used to run the Homeland Security grants here in Nevada in my former position, and so that really interests me. So when you say you have, there was a 3% requirement and we can't legally apply for that at that point in time, does that put the rest of the grant in jeopardy? Because you do have to make those allocations to the areas that the grant requires for the entire Homeland Security grant. So if it says that you have to do 3% towards elections, or in different years has been 5 or 10%, you have to make those qualifications to accept the entire grant. Is there any more information on that?
Thank you for the question, Senator. Mark Voloshin for the record. That's an excellent concern that we brought up immediately as well. It's my understanding that, again, the Office of Emergency Management is the entity that manages that grant. Our accounting team reached out to them as soon as we got confirmation from our legal team that the recommendation was that this would not be possible for us to pursue. We made them aware. I don't have an update on that. I can get you one, though, and we'll make sure that the committee has that as soon as possible.
Thank you. And I'll check some other avenues for that information as well and see how I could possibly assist. But my other question Great. I'll start with great presentation. Excited about the dashboard. I'm curious about the mail-in ballots, and one question that I have on them is and this could be ballpark, but how many mail-in ballots that are not including the absentee that you discussed, but how many mail-in ballots do we actually send to out-of-state addresses?
Thank you for the question, Senator Mark Valash, for the record. I'm sorry, I don't have that roughly out of state.
Just rough, yeah. I guess would be great, yeah. And if you can't, I understand too.
I apologize. You
Madam
got
Chair,
me.
Cisco Aguilar, Secretary of State. I think one thing we have to be careful about that number too is a great question. You always have really strong questions. I appreciate it because it makes us think about these things even more. But is the number of military voters who are on active duty? And so what that percentage is probably significant in the overall out-of-state voters that we mail them.
But those would be absentees, right?
Oh, well, they're the same. It's all universal mail ballot.
Okay.
So,
all right. And the reason that I bring it up is that at my house, I've been getting a California mail-in ballot for 5 years for a relative who really brings concerns to me about this, right? I mean, he's lived in Nevada for over 5 years, and they continue to mail these ballots to our house, and he has no residency in any way. And so I'm concerned about those type of issues happening in Nevada, the opposite direction.
Madam Chair, through you to Senator Steinbeck, I assume you're talking about a California ballot and not a Nevada ballot?
Yes, sir. No,
Okay.
I'm definitely not saying that. Sir.
My response would be, I wish California was part of the ERIC system, which helps us do the voter maintenance and voter roll updates that we need to do. The fact that California is probably not in ERIC creates some of those types of issues. However, I think the fact that Nevada remains a part of ERIC helps us do that, but also too, with the new VREM system, the top-down voter registration system, we're getting more consistent in our voter roll maintenance to address some of those issues. I think you saw over the last few months a significant amount of voter roll maintenance that has gone through, and the fact that we get challenges from the public on some voter roll or voters on the voter roll, and to check that against our actual processes under state and federal law, and to see that we are addressing most of those challenges already shows that the system is working as intended. As I said before, we're always looking for ways to get better at what we're doing, to get more consistent across all 17 counties, but to do it under state and be compliant with state and federal law.
Thank you. And last follow-up, if I may. Thank you. And then, so if it went to an out-of-state address over multiple years, would that trigger further exploration on that as far as residency requirements back to Nevada?
Madam Chair, through you to Senator Steinbeck, I will let Mark answer that question because he can give you the direct feedback on that.
Thank you for the question, Senator Mark Valash, for the record. So the list maintenance process depends heavily on not only the Postal Service, but also really voter awareness. When a ballot is sent, again, if it arrives at an address that somebody has moved from, if the voter ideally puts return to sender and it comes back, it initiates that under statute and federal law, the list maintenance process. We are looking very closely at other options, though, and there's actually a thing that we're planning on doing, a new process that stays within the confines of existing state and federal law that will enable county election officials to clean their rolls even more frequently without necessarily waiting years and years and years for a voter to write return to sender. Again, truth be told, right, a lot of Nevadans don't realize that you can write return to sender on a ballot these days. So there is a new process that we're looking at implementing after the 26 election cycle that will enable a voter who has had no activity in their voter registration, has not voted in the previous 2 years, for the election official to send a notice to them to initiate, the inactivation process. Again, not cancellation. Cancellation, again, means something very different, but it would simply remove them from the active rolls, so they would not be sent a mail ballot, which I think gets to your point.
It does, and that would be great. Thank you very much. I appreciate it, Madam Chair.
Madam Chair, through you
Yes.
to the Senator Cisco Aguilar, Secretary of State. Again, the return to sender is important, and we try to tell voters that all the time. If you do receive a ballot that's not intended for you at your address, please write return to sender on it, because then that lets the county clerks know that they need to start the process on it. It's just an additional step that brings another awareness to the process. So
We'll help get that message out.
thank you.
Thank you. I also didn't know you could write return to sender on there, so we definitely got to do more to get that information out, or maybe we can even print it on there and have people circle it and mail it back. Although I know with vendors putting, the change of a word can cost a lot of money. So definitely looking forward to those conversations. We do have some final questions from our Vice Chair, Senator Orangel.
Thank you very much, Chair. And thank you, Secretary. Thank you, Deputy Secretary Washington, Chief Deputy, for the presentation. And thank you for fighting so hard for the top-down system. I know you've been hearing about it for years and hearing that we need it, and your office made it happen and has made it possible for us to have this kind of tracking and accuracy. So I want to appreciate that. I talk to a lot of constituents who are seniors and are handicapped and like vote by mail and like that they can just have it in their mailbox and not have to worry about getting a ride if they don't have transportation. And some of the things coming out of Washington, whether it's what you discussed with the Postal Service or the executive orders and who knows what may be coming down, are scaring a lot of my constituents as to whether their vote will count, whether the election is going to happen. And I just wonder, what do you think, Mr. Secretary, we can tell our constituents to reassure them that their vote will count? There will be an election this year, and regardless of what next executive order might come or next policy that might thwart ballots being turned in, that people can feel safe that their ballots are going to be counted.
Madam Chair, through you to Senator Orenshaw, Cisco Aguilar, Secretary of State. Thank you for that question. That's a conversation that's taking place across many communities in this state. And I can tell you that we are confident as the Secretary of State, as county clerks and city clerks, we are going to have an election. Again, it is very clear in the United States Constitution that states are responsible for managing elections. And until we're told to not do so by the courts or the United States Supreme Court, or there is a change in Congress, we will continue to do as we have done them in the past and continue to do them until told otherwise. So one, you can tell you that as a Secretary of State, and understanding that I don't think Nevadans want our elections nationalized. They want to ensure that they continue to operate at the state and local level. And the local piece is the really critical piece. It's the 17 clerks across the state and city, both at the county and city level, that are the ones that actually execute the elections. They live in these communities. They understand their voters. They are our neighbors. They want to ensure that people have a voice. We don't care what political party you vote for. What we care about is the fact that you continue to participate in the process and the system.
I appreciate that answer. Thank you, Mr. Secretary.
One other comment is, again, I think it's important for all of you as members of this committee to remain confident in that process and to reassure your constituents that we will continue to do as we have done them before and that we will continue to ensure their voice is heard.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you so much for the presentations. I'm also looking forward to the tracking system. I track it on the system we have now, which, can use improvements, which is what we're doing. So thank you. We will move on to our next agenda item, which is an update on the voter registration and election management solutions.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair. Mark Voloshin, for the record, Deputy Secretary of State for Elections. Appreciate your opportunity again to provide this testimony in regards to an update on the Voter Registration and Election Management Solution, or VREMS project. Again, relatively short agenda, also 12 slides total, which I've prefaced just so that you're aware, and then we'll go to questions. And the last slide, of course, is the question slide. So from an executive summary standpoint, I'll probably say this a couple times during this presentation, and I know this is not the fiscal committee, but I understand that there's a hefty fiscal component to this project. Overall, the VREMS project is directed by Assembly Bill 422 in the 2021 legislative session, is on time and on budget. Phase 2, from a big picture, is complete, and phase 3 is ongoing. Again, and we'll talk a little bit about the details of what that meant, how we got here, and what the project is. But I think from a starting point, that's an important thing to note. On the staffing side, again, no issues. We're appropriately staffed. You can see the numbers there. It does involve a fairly hefty project team of 26 contractors, as well as a number of my permanent staff in the elections division that work either in part or full time, focusing on this project to make sure that it has gone as necessary to the success and benefit of the voters. And those benefits specifically, again, they really will continue to be realized. We talked previously at times about security and the benefits to voter list maintenance of a top-down system, but then also even just today, right, this discussion about the dashboard that we mentioned a moment ago. There really will be a continuing series of benefits to voters that will cover both now and that you'll start to see over the next approximately 12 to 24 months as well. So a little bit about the background on the project. Again, I mentioned that there was a bill that directed it in 2021, but even before that, this idea of a centralized voter registration database. It ties back to, again, one of the most influential federal acts relating to the improvement of elections, the Help America Vote Act, of course, of 2002, that requires states to develop a computerized statewide voter registration list. We were in compliance with that, of course, after that act passed. But there are a number of different ways that it could be done. And until the passage of Assembly Bill 422 in 2021, our state was a bottom-up system. What does that mean? Each of our 17 county election officials had their own database, so that if you registered to vote in Elko, for example, they created a voter registration for you in Elko. You voted there, and then when you eventually moved from Elko to a different county, they would go through the list maintenance process as directed by state and federal law. And then after a series of federal elections where you did not update your registration or vote or do anything, only then could you be canceled. And then from Elko's point of view, you were a canceled voter and you were off their rolls. But you would have moved to a new place and had a brand new voter registration start up. That system of 17 isolated databases was compliant with the federal HAVA requirement only because on a daily basis, each of our 17 counties sent what amounted to a lowest common denominator of data to the Secretary of State's office. That nightly file that was sent through a secure FTP server in process was a one-time snapshot of what voters had registered or been removed or inactivated or updates to that county voter rolls that came to the state and then were aggregated together. There were a number of other checks that process enabled. By sending the county lists to the state to aggregate, you could then check to see, oh, wait a minute, there was a voter in one county who now appears to have moved to another. There's a voter who's attempting to register in 2 different counties, or perhaps, other updates as applicable and other checks and balances that you could do. The state would also then take that master statewide voter registration list and compare it to Social Security Administration databases as well, and see if there were names on the list of individuals who had died and it matched their name, birth date, last 4, then we would know that essentially the state would notify the county and they would begin the cancellation process for a deceased voter. So that the process was compliant up to the passage of the top-down bill, AB 422 in 2021. But the idea of transitioning to a centralized database makes sense for a number of different reasons. Now, again, the way the system works, and since the implementation, we are on a singular database. This singular database means that if that same, kind of using the example, voter in Elko registers to vote, but if that voter moves from Elko to a different county, say 20, 30 years after starting their voting experience process, of course hitting the age of 18 in other words, their voter record would essentially be able to go with them to the new county. This means all of their vote history, their signatures, all of the things that identify who they are as a voter that enable the security of that voter's record would carry with them. And it wouldn't be separate databases with separate isolated voter roll lists. Again, now it's still a county managed voter roll, albeit as part of the statewide secretary's system and voter registration database. Again, a number of accuracy or improvements to the process that you can see in the top-down benefits on the slide, from everything from reporting and data accuracy to list maintenance, as I mentioned. There's far more security as well, and I again, hate to even bring it up, but even just a few months ago when our state suffered a pretty painful, cyber attack, again, because we were on a top-down system that was isolated and dedicated from the rest of the state government systems, your voter registration information was protected. It was not touched or altered or messed with at all because of the nature of this program and this system. Centralization also allows the use of increased resources for security and protection of that data, as was shown. Another unique factor in the before times, when we were a bottom-up state, is that all of our 17 counties had the ability to use a different election management system or voter registration database. So there were a number of different vendors across the state as well, supporting county voter data rules. Because we've transitioned to a singular database with a singular vendor, there are significant enhancements to the training opportunities, as you can imagine. Now, all 17 counties, because they're using the same system, now have the ability to work together or with the state's training team or with a singular vendor to identify improvements to the user manuals, to ask questions. When it comes time for enhancements to the system, because of either statutory changes perhaps, or even with the user interface. If somebody says, I just really need it to be Helvetica, we now have the ability to make a singular change that impacts and benefits across the 17 counties in a way that before each of the 17 counties individually would have had to budget for, request, and try to work to get implemented, which frankly was challenging at times. So the phased approach that we've worked with, again, initially is the 16 counties in phase one. That was possible in part because Clark County was also on the same system, essentially in parallel. So all 17 counties were on the system, albeit not in the fully integrated mode yet. Phase two, again, was the integration. So now we are at a point where all 17 counties in the full database, again, it now compares the counties for that sort of cross-county mover and those sorts of things also. In phase three, as I mentioned, again, there's a number of different benefits that we'll speak to here in a minute. A little bit of an eye chart. I apologize, but again, really since the session, a number of different things that I'd like to flag have continued to occur. Not only the Clark integration is mentioned, but also again additional training opportunities, right? That stem from that benefit of being on the same system, using the same vendor. Again, when two or more counties identify an opportunity for improvement, and that's not just necessarily Clark and Washoe, of course, our largest counties, but if two of our smaller ones identify an improvement that would benefit them, again, that gets discussed across the state. Again, this whole process, by the way, heavy involvement from county election officials and their teams as they are the primary ones using the database and election management system. We can work then directly with the vendor. The contract with the vendor is at the state level, which is also beneficial so that, again, when it comes to from a contractual compliance standpoint, it's the Secretary's office, us, that gets to ensure that it's being enforced so that, again, county election officials identify challenges, issues, will work across the state to validate and to get details, and then the state helps work to get those corrections made through our project team while working very closely hand in hand with the vendor so that those identified changes or issues can be addressed. Again, that process has really grown and matured over the last few years, which has been amazing to see and be a part of. I also want to flag, and this touches on that a little bit, and maybe it's just more of a flow chart to highlight it, but the idea of this bug enhancement model. Again, previously, a county identified a bug when it was just their own system. They would have had to work directly with the vendor. Vendor may have charged them. That may have resulted in changes that would have made their system different from even adjacent counties with the same vendor. But now, again, because it's the Secretary's top-down system as directed by state law, again, of course, like I said, and I'm going to continue to stress the heavy involvement from county election officials as the clerks and registrars identify issues, whether it's a technical or an interface or an opportunity for an enhancement and improvement. We've got a streamlined process for validation, review, and then ultimately implementation to the benefit of election officials. And we'll have something similar as we continue to move forward. And as I mentioned, we continue to realize the opportunities for enhancements from a public-facing standpoint as well. Not a financial committee. Just going to say that again real quick before anybody cuts me off. But the operational impact, of course, wouldn't be possible without the finances. So I'm merely including this because from a transparency standpoint, there are operational considerations and policy considerations about how the budget is being spent in the Secretary's interests of transparency. Again, this slide that I'm now going to move past, and then also the next slide, we included because one, if there is a policy question about the budget that you all have, eager to answer questions about it, or if you'd like to discuss it later, or again, from a public standpoint, if there's questions about how and why the things I talked about are only possible because of the financial piece. But if you have questions on the policy, eager to explain and discuss that. Okay, we're past the financial piece now. But if you have questions, again, wanted to make sure that we had that on the record in case it does come up. The way forward, again, these sorts of statewide massive IT projects, I will tell you, in my experience here at the state, and since this project started with the passage of the bill in 21, are absolutely not easy. Our state has done very well comparatively to some of the other states out there trying to make this transition. A number of states that, again, don't need to be named, have started a transition to a top-down system and failed, have started a transition, gone years into putting funding into different processes and just were unable to cross the finish line. I'm firmly basically an advocate of I preach that the reason we were able to do this is a fewfold. One, again, not a financial committee, but without the financial support from the legislature and the governor, the project simply couldn't have happened. That enabled us to hire a project team that has just exceptionally talented individuals who have done large statewide national projects in new issues and how to anticipate and mitigate those risks. Of course, and as the Secretary said too, our county and city election officials, their teams, the fact that they all collectively recognize the importance and the benefits and have pulled no punches in not only identifying issues, but working hand in hand with us at the state to make sure this project was successful could not have been done without our county and city partners as well. And a huge amount of the credit goes to them for their work. But this massive project, I want to clarify, is not over. Like any sort of, again, and I think this is perfectly indicative, your iPhone, Windows, right? It seems like every other day we've got a new update you got to do and reset your computer, or just kind of randomly resets to implement a security update. In a very real sense, this sort of project has that level of engagement. There are continuously things that we are looking to enhance with security that we will continue to do so. We're always trying to stay one step ahead of foreign and domestic actors from a cyber threat perspective. From a user interface, again, there continues to be turnover at county and state and city election offices, trying to set it up so that it's as intuitive as possible, so that a new staff member in a county office who is learning about how to be a clerk of the court and clerk of a board and a public administrator now also has to learn how to register voters and update. We want that to be an easy process, so we're going to continue to work on refining it and making it better and the manuals as clear as possible. And then lastly, there's some enhancements that we continue to look at. When you look at the phase 3 scope on the slide, again, there's the simulation, the idea that you may remember when a number of our county election officials came here to Carson City to practice using an election together in the same room. That sort of, again, opportunity and experience simply wouldn't have been possible under the previous model, where, again, many of them had different vendors and it wouldn't have even made sense. Kind of a Mac and PC type of interface that wouldn't have enabled that sort of shoulder-to-shoulder discussion that really enhanced their new staff members' learning and validation of the system. There's additional petitions. Again, we have a number of statewide initiative petitions, and there's independent candidate for partisan office petitions. The system has a petitions module to make sure that it's in compliance with state law. That's been implemented and tested, again, very much in part because of a number of our counties, that, especially the larger ones, Clark and Washoe in particular, and Douglas, who use that module and want to make sure that it's done right. Again, that the level of engagement cannot be left unsaid. Again, a transition from the ability to candidate filing, right, in the Aurora system that you may remember, and being able to transition and import that information into Total Vote, the system, to essentially build the ballots that get sent and work with our vendors to create the mail ballots, again, on the timeline. It seems like candidate filing just ended yesterday, basically, and now sample ballots have to go out, again, next week. That short timeline, again, was in part possible because of the system. Looking to the future, again, there's public portal enhancements when you go to vote.nv.gov to update or register to vote for the first time. That system, that public-facing portal, we've identified as in need of improvement, and very similar to the information we have in our dashboard. If we have access to it, why not make it so that a voter who registers can see all those same things, but even at a greater level of depth? The dashboard, right? Aggregated data. But for a voter, why wouldn't they be able to see their whole voter registration? Absolutely should be able to. All of their signatures on file, so they can look and say, oh yeah, here's how my signature has changed over the years. Or maybe I want to update it, and now that flags that opportunity for the voter instead of just a single signature that we currently have. A number of opportunities, including change logs and when did I update my email address, and you can see the exact date and the exact number and time that those sorts of changes happen. So we are going to be working on a public-facing portal here in the near future. Hope to get that in front of voters too. Ballot Scout, the idea of ballot tracking integration. Again, as a parent of 3 teenagers myself, it seems like the school might have like 15 different apps, one for like the classroom, one for the sports teams. And the Secretary's vision is to have a single place. Voters should be able to go to a single place and look at their voter registration and track their ballot and update their registration and look at their sample ballot all in one portal without having to jump between 15 different applications. So integrating that information again into a centralized single place for the benefit of the voter continues to be the goal and the focus. Operational and additional functionality, of course, working through additional bugs and enhancements that are again, county and city election officials and our team at the state, as they find them, we identify them, log them, prioritize them, and get them addressed. That's going to continue, into the future as well, but making sure we're addressing those in a mature and systematic fashion. So it's not just a list of bugs 400 deep, but that there's progress in identifying and working through challenges that our county election officials identify in their day-to-day use. And then again, really the operational model and the sustainment piece. 26 contractors is a lot of contractors. They're not going to be here forever. We understand that. But as we, in the last session and possibly in the next session, depending on decisions, request to try to convert contractor positions that have proved to be exceptionally valuable to this project and to voters across our state into full-time equivalent employees of the state. That discussion will continue to be had in future legislative sessions as well. And then lastly, the training. Talked about it earlier, but the fact that we now have a singular system so that every one of the roughly 150 election officials across the state have the ability to reach out to a help desk and ask questions that is run by the Secretary's office, to be able to identify improvements and talk with their counterparts across the counties. There's so much merit from a training perspective when it comes to, again, building experience, because again, it may be a little bit obvious, but just to say it, the more experienced and the easier the system is for our county and state and city election officials to use, that means less chance of errors, of human error. That means an increased ability for tasks to be done in a timely manner, so that when voters have questions or there is a competing clerk of the court responsibility, or one of the multitude of other requirements or tasks, that means that the work can still get done to make sure that our voter lists are clean, like our counties, cities, and state want them to be, like you want them to be, like I want them to be. So that the training element and that consistency by having a unified system, a standardized system, is really a valuable part of this whole thing. There's a number of other opportunities, including expanding some of and this ties into other legislative requests that have been approved in the last session. The idea of a training lab, again, building again, my military background, calling it a boot camp is something that is easy for me, but also probably sends the wrong message. There's no yelling. I don't want anybody to think that. But having like a boot camp here in Carson City where any county can send their election officials on a legislatively approved budget, we've got appropriated funding for the per diem and training, the travel rather to attend training, so that they can come to Carson and go through a 3-day boot camp, 1-day boot camp on the system, on voting machines, so they can go back to their county with a capability and the ability to set up a polling place and understanding ADA compliance. It only benefits voters in a way, again, that is again, very much a different change from 15, 20 years ago. And then lastly, as we look to the future, more on our plate, the tabletop exercise discussions, again, physical cybersecurity enhancements, further other discussions that tie into the VREMS project, making sure that we continue to stay at the cutting edge of discussions about the cyber threat, best practices, again, well within the confines of our state and federal laws for voter registrations and communicating with voters, how we tie that all together and keep it in a database that the county officials can talk to their voters about, but also that the state has the visibility on to ensure compliance and transparency is just continues to be a very powerful thing and a position that we're in now, again, going back to the passage of Assembly Bill 422 and 21. At this time, are there any questions for me?
Thank you so much for your presentation. Members, any questions? Any questions up north? Senator Daly.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just following up from, I think, our last presentation, is everybody still resistant to AI having control over some of the registration data and various things? And I hope that doesn't come up on, hey, we can fix this, and you guys talk about it and implement it. I still think it's a bad idea because Skynet is coming. You can't control that stuff.
Thank you for the question, Senator. Mark Voloshin for the record. I'll be frank, AI does come up in discussions a lot, but so far not to touch the voter registration databases. We've considered its use as part of our modernization and innovation for chatbots to try to help explain, to validate some of the documents that were translated by our again, we're required to use state-approved contracts. So we are trying to look very carefully, and I know there's a number of national level discussions about the use of AI when it comes to how to better communicate and inform voters. But rest assured, there's not been any discussion about integrating AI into any part of what I just talked about from an election management standpoint or touching on the voter registration database.
Thank you. We'll see what we can do to keep it that way. When we get back to session.
Thank you so much. We will now move to our next agenda item, progress and challenges in recruiting and retaining election workers and protection of election workers. We will hear from the Secretary of State's office and city and county clerks on these challenges. Whenever you're, please proceed whenever you're ready.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mark Voloshin for the record. I'm going to start just to preface this next agenda item with a very brief overview. Truth be told, I'm very excited to hear from my colleagues across the 3 counties who are going to present with far more interesting data, I suspect, than I have been providing so far. But so, again, just a quick overview, and then I'll turn it over to my colleagues. I know we have Clark County down south, and then Washoe and Elko up here as well. So starting with a little bit of historical perspective, and then we'll talk a little bit about the 26 requirements, and then I'll quickly turn it over to them. First, when we talk about poll workers, just to be clear, from a pure technical standpoint, according to our statutes, we're talking about election board officers. That is simply the technical term, and you'll see that come up repeatedly, but a poll worker is an election board officer. The statute, again, created in 1960, hasn't been touched since because it is pretty straightforward, a person appointed to assist in the conduct of an election. You'll notice, again, that there are different variety of roles that you'll hear about today, and depending on where you're at across our state, there's a lot of that, there's a reason for that. One, again, bigger populations allow for specialization. Smaller counties, of course, will train individuals because you may have 2 or 3 that need to do multiple different jobs. You may have individuals who, again, are expected to do job A, but then if that person doesn't show up, you may need to get somebody else from job B to do job A. So again, the smaller the county, generally speaking, there's a little bit more generalization. Again, you can see at the bottom there, and this is historic. So if the roles have changed, again, this is simply because it's perhaps old information, but these are some of the roles, for example, that Clark County has used that encompass or fall under that umbrella, rather, of an election board officer or poll worker. The requirements, again, this statute in particular, 293-217, there's a number of other different requirements to talk about. The requirements for poll workers, you'll hear today, I suspect, about required to be a registered voter in the state. Some counties, if you have a requirement to be a registered voter in that county, again, this is also an important time to differentiate between a poll worker who's working the election and an election observer who's allowed to watch. A poll worker must be a registered voter of Nevada, unless you're pre-registered or a 16-year-old, and we'll talk about that in a second. But an election observer can be anyone, right? We have international observers that come to our state to watch how we conduct elections. High school students from adjacent states come to Nevada to observe elections. Those observers, and oftentimes you'll hear concerns or questions about, I saw a bus from California that came with people that they may just be wanting to watch or observe, but to be a poll worker, to work the election, we have statutory requirements. I've highlighted a part, of the statute that talks about the importance of not being all of the same political party. You'll likely hear some of the challenges of that today also. Again, that's very much by design. It does not mean necessarily that it must be a Republican or a Democratically aligned voter, but also nonpartisan and minor parties. Again, this is something that our county election officials take seriously and look very closely at. I mentioned pupils or high school students. Again, we have a statute that allows high school students of the age of 16 to be able to get involved in their county elections. Again, when you ask, not every county necessarily is able to use them in high school students in every polling place. Again, just given some of the physical distance between some of our high schools and some of the polling places, it may not be practical. Certainly don't want 16-year-old drivers necessarily driving late at night for hundreds of miles after working 12 hours a day, that sort of thing also. So there's a safety concern. But it is something truly that we, and I know the counties especially, have really pushed informing and involving high school students in the process. Having them see how it works is just an eye-opening experience. And truly helps inform them so that as they get closer to voting age, they've got a leg up in understanding kind of what goes on behind the scenes. So it's certainly something that we encourage, and I would ask that if you know any educators as well, please encourage it in the high schools as well, because it's such a great opportunity. Excuse me. And then a couple more stats that I want to touch on. Security. The security of poll workers also very much a priority. There was a bill passed, Senate Bill 406 in 2023 that was codified as NRS 293-705. This statute actually talks specifically about the protection of election officials and poll workers. It does encompass temporary poll workers as well. Again, unique in the nation, to the best of my knowledge and the research I've done, because it identifies it as a felony to threaten, harass, or dox even a poll worker or an election official and trying to prevent them from doing their jobs, not only at the polling place, but also off duty, depending on, again, the situation and circumstances. I also want to clarify, though, and this is, I think, equally important as I remember for the discussion, that bill also clarifies that it does not infringe upon the ability for somebody under law to observe, take notes, and it lays out the other statutes as well. Like, it doesn't reduce or otherwise interfere with. The observation piece is critical to our democracy and understanding, again, those election observers now absolutely can still do what they need to do, take notes, observe polling places, and otherwise, the statute clarifies that is also very much protected and not limited. This bill, I think, there was a kind of a historic challenge following maybe the last 6 or so years, give or take, trying to recruit poll workers, and I think maybe you'll hear some about that discussion today from the county election officials. But I personally believe that this bill, whenever folks have expressed concern about being a poll worker. We stress that this law, again, passed unanimously, signed by the governor, sends a very clear legislative message to election officials and poll workers alike that, again, regardless of party affiliation, we recognize that poll workers are an essential part of the process and should be protected. Passing out an I voted sticker or being involved in duplication or tabulation, any part of the process, does not somehow entitle you to be abused or attacked by anyone. Which I think has helped then supporting recruitment efforts over the last few years. Also, again, from the Eves report in 2024, this is the number of polling places. This time I want to stress the number of poll workers. Again, that right column, approximately 4,000 for a general election year. Again, it varies, of course, by county. You may be wondering what the breakdown looks like. That's here. Also from the 2024 Eves report, again, showing that there's kind of really a wide disparity across the counties. Clark County, in case it's too small, 2,833 were reported, down to, Pershing's got 14. Esmeralda had 9 poll workers. So again, varying challenges across the state, but again, like I said, between Carson, Washoe, and Elko counties, I'm excited to hear their conversations about how they address some of those challenges today. Last slide, then I'm going to eagerly stand up and walk away from the dais. The requirements for 26, as I mentioned, keenly aware that voter turnout will be assumed to be lower. Again, in discussions, we don't expect it. And the two stats there in the middle, you can see the 2018 primary, 22 primary. The total turnouts, respectively, were just about below 23% and a little above 25%, respectively. I do not think that is going to be the turnout in the 26 June primary. Just given a lot of the voter engagement over the last couple of years, we assess that it's going to be big, which means that, of course, you need more poll workers to support the electorate. But again, poll worker recruitment in certain locations kind of challenging depending on demographic shifts. As the state continues to grow and folks move in different places, that part of it will continue to be challenging. At the end of the day, though, I always try to leave and encourage people, like, when in doubt, just please recognize that we need people to be poll workers, and very much that means you, everybody, not just, assuming someone else is going to do it, but we tell folks, like, we need everyone to be engaged in our process to make sure that we've got enough people and that it moves freely. But then also, right, the more you do it, the more you understand what's behind the scenes and how it functions, and that eliminates a lot of the mystery behind the electoral process as well. But that being said, unless there's any questions, I'll turn it over first maybe to Ashley down south, and then I'll turn it over to Registrar McDonald up here, and then Clerk Plunkett.
Thank you so much. At this time, I am going to hand the meeting over to our Vice Chair. Thank you all so much, and you all can start when you're ready.
Thank you very much, Chair. And I think we'll start down here in Southern Nevada. And thank you, Deputy Secretary Woloshyn, for the excellent presentation. Really a lot of valuable information. We appreciate all the work the Secretary's office is doing. Members will be at ease for just a moment. Good afternoon, Ms. Kennedy. Thank you so much for joining us today. We appreciate you taking the time to educate us about what Clark County is doing in anticipation of the upcoming election. So please begin whenever you're ready.
Thank you, Vice Chair Orenshaw and members of the committee. My name is Ashley Kennedy, here on behalf of the Clark County Election Department. I'm sorry that Registrar Coutillo cannot be here today. She had a conflict, and I hope I can do this presentation justice for her. But go through a little bit of what we're doing. So the Clark County Election Department, we are a team of 52 permanent staff members. We have 6 divisions. Today, I'm going to be talking primarily about our training and recruitment division. We serve, as most of you know, almost 1.5 million registered voters. We cover the 8,000 square miles, which is roughly the size of New Jersey, and we have more than 900 precincts. So in preparation for the 26th primary election, our goal is to recruit, hire, and train 4,000 election workers. That will support 23 long-term voting sites, 69 short-term early voting sites, and 137 election day vote centers. We did already finalize all of our sites, so that QR code will take you to what is posted on our website currently. I also did want to note, if you are not aware, long-term voting sites are sites that are usually open most of early voting. Our short-term sites are ones that are temporary. So for example, you might see us at a grocery store for a few days, and then we might be at a different spot for another few days. So encompassing that 69 short-term sites. Also included in this short-term early voting sites are voting sites exclusively for senior communities. And then on our election day vote centers, that number also includes a voting site at the Clark County Detention Center and the Clark County Department of Juvenile Justice. The Training and Recruitment Division, they are a full-time permanent team of 5 people, and we have 12 seasonal recruiters and 20 seasonal trainers that are working with us right now. They are seasonal because they are with us during the course of the election cycle. To date, we have 3,000 election workers currently trained or scheduled to be trained here soon. We hold training classes 6 days a week, including our outlying areas. So again, we're a pretty large geographic county. We have election needs, election sites and election worker needs, and all the outlying areas like Laughlin, Moapa, Searchlight, etc. And so not only do we have training classes in urban Clark County at our training facility, but we also bring our training to our outlying areas, and we have more than 340 classes. So a little bit about our timeline. I appreciate that the Secretary of State's office mentioned how much goes into planning for the election. In the spring of last year, we started conducting test elections, and you can probably anticipate exactly what that is. We plan and we prepare for the election. We are prepared of all the possible contingencies. It's also a way for us to test any new equipment, and we really go through the motions of an actual election on a small scale. We actually have some of our long-standing team leaders, which are the supervisors of our voting sites that support us during these test elections. So since May of 2025, we've gone through 7 test elections already. With that, going through those motions also helps us prepare our training materials. So by the end of last year, we were already finalizing our training materials, all of our manuals and presentations that go into training that amount of election workers. In January of this year, our trainers and recruiters started. A recruiter is, imagine what you probably can assume, is the folks that are getting election workers scheduled and assigned to voting sites, and our trainers are giving them all they need to succeed at a site. And we started training the first week of March this year in preparation for the primary. Deputy Voloshin talked about our voting sites, our positions at our voting sites. The other thing that I wanted to include in here that maybe was not listed on his site, on his slide, was a night rider and a rover. But I'll go through the different positions. A poll pad operator is very much what you can anticipate. It's the person who's checking in voters when they arrive at a voting site. A voting machine monitor is helping voters understand how to use the equipment, navigate them through the voting site. The line monitor is monitoring the line outside, making sure signs are are still standing, the pathway to the voting site still accessible, people aren't electioneering where they're not supposed to be. Our mail ballot clerk, similar to what was said previously, we have a mail ballot drop box at every site. So there is somebody that's supervising that mail ballot drop box and making sure voters signed their ballot and sealed it. And then the two positions that I wanted to highlight are our night rider and our rover. So a night rider is somebody who goes out to our outlying sites and they are paired with a metro officer. So normally our team leader, after the election sites close, they're gathering all the election materials and they're coming back to our headquarters. For our outlying areas like Laughlin, over nearly 2 hours away from us, having someone work a 14-hour day and then drive to Clark County and then back home is a lot. So we have people that will go and pick up the materials from outlying areas with Metro. And then our rover is somebody who helps. Normally what we do is we assign rovers to different geographic areas. So they might be assigned to, let's just say, the northwest end of the county, and they're responsible for roving between the different voting sites and providing support. They are well trained. They can probably step into any position if they needed to, but they're really to provide support, make sure that any team leader or voting site that's low on supplies, that they're bringing that, et cetera, and they're constantly just very close by. So a little demographic from the 2024 general. I did want to put together the kind of average age of an election worker. As you can see, majority of them are over the age of 40. And then last general, we had 1,300 folks support us during early voting and 2,500 on election day. So I wanted to highlight some of our key successes. For those of you who have been to our headquarters before or have potentially seen our training facility that we share with Task Force One, but we, in preparation for the 22 election, we moved into a new training facility. We used to have our training classes at our headquarters, our election warehouse, and we just simply outgrew it with the volume of election workers that we were training. So we moved across the street, and we have 5 classrooms that are really good size, and we also have a call center that supports over 100 call center employees. So during the election, we have multiple hotlines going at once. We have hotlines available to voters where they need to answer, they have any various election related questions, but we also have hotlines that support our election workers. And that is something that's really important to us, is that for any person who is coming to work at a voting site, it's a temporary thing that you are doing for early voting and election day, and then you may not think about it until the next election. And so it's important that we always have a resource just to call away. And so we will have hotlines that support, for example, a registration hotline. So any voter issue related to someone's voter registration, there's a hotline to support those questions, an IT hotline, administrative hotline, and so forth. I'm really excited this year. We've also done some enhancement to our training programs. We're always looking for ways to improve. So we've tried to standardize lesson plans, really create a more robust train the trainer program. And then we have incorporated student feedback on our classes. And as of date, we have received a 9 out of 10. So I think that's pretty good. We have increased the number of recruiters. We can only train the people that come in who want to be election workers. And so we have increased our recruiters that are helping us. And we have also done a lot of voter outreach and demonstrations to get out into the community to not only show our voting equipment, but also to recruit people to be election workers. One other program that I think we're always really excited about is the support that we get from Clark County employees. So the county has a long tradition over the last several decades for county management, county commission to support Clark County employees working with us during the election. So as you can imagine, with the amount of scale that we are growing for the election, we need all the help that we can get. And so we have a lot of county employees who they're not volunteers, they're still getting paid by their department, and their department is graciously lending them to us for election day. During the general election, we had over 350 county employees support us, and to date, we have over 400 supporting us for the primary. And then also recently, we have implemented a new election worker management system, which is integrated with Total Vote, or our registration system. And it has been wonderful because it's a one system database that can track our election workers, assigning them to vote sites, and also managing our training schedule. And then I wanted to go through some areas of opportunities. So I think ongoing challenges that we always face every election is last minute cancellations before election day. I think we anticipate that we will train and have and lose maybe 40% of our election workers, because maybe we recruited them in February, they came to our training in March, and life changes and they can no longer help us once it gets closer to election day. With that being said, we are training months in advance of the election. And the reason being, with the volume that we are training and the number of space that we have, we're kind of assessing backwards. So how many do we need to get? How many can we do in a week? And so when do we have to start that? And that puts us months in advance. The other thing that I would highlight is feedback that we've received is election day is a really long day. Polls are open from 7 to 7, and election workers are arriving at 5:30 a.m. and they're likely not leaving till well after 8 p.m. It's a really long day, and I think sometimes that can be a hindrance for folks. In this year in particular, we do have new election equipment. I don't know if anybody has seen us out in the community at any events, but we do have done a tour with us. We do have new election equipment that will be new this year. And with that, all of our training materials that we previously had are now outdated. And so we had to recreate a lot of things to account for those changes. And that also increased our recruitment needs. We recognize that new is sometimes can be a challenge for folks. They expected one way and then they come in like, this looks completely different than what I anticipated. So we are anticipating those needs. And so we are recruiting a lot more people to support us. And if any of your constituencies are interested in becoming an election worker, I would not be doing my job if I did not encourage you to scan this QR code and send it to folks. It is obviously a paid position. It's not a volunteer position. Granted, there are volunteer opportunities, but it is a paid gig, and we are still looking for folks to join us.
Thank you very much for that excellent presentation. Appreciate everything Clark County Election Department is doing to make sure that our constituents can participate and have a smooth voting experience, whether it's mail ballots, early voting, or election day voting. Members, any questions for Ms. Kennedy from Clark County? Up in Carson City, any questions? I don't see. Senator Steinbeck.
Thank you for the presentation. I just have a quick comment. When I go in to vote, I am always so impressed with the demeanor and the excitement and the attitude of the workers there. So I just want to pass that on. It is just really nice. If you know, I know people like to do the mail-in ballots, but the workers that are there, they are excited to be there, and they're excited when you walk in, and are excited to help guide you through the process. So my compliments on that.
Appreciate that. Thank you very much, Senator Steinbeck. I'm not seeing any other questions or comments. We will go a bit back to Carson City, where we have representatives from Washoe County and Elko County. Whoever would like to begin. And thank you very much, Ms. Kennedy from Clark County.
Good afternoon, Chair Gonzalez, Vice Chair Orangeall, and committee members. My name is Andrew McDonald. I'm the Registrar of Voters here in Washoe County. Today I'll be presenting on election worker recruitment and training. I might be interchanging the term poll worker with election worker, but for this presentation, specifically, they mean the same thing. Just a little bit about Washoe County. Washoe County covers about 6,540 square miles in total. In fact, our county goes all the way up to the Oregon border. We have about 500,000 residents and about 316,000 active registered voters at this time. We're the second largest voting bloc in Nevada with about 15% of the voter turnout in the state, and is largely known as a swing county in a swing state. For our staff, we have 18 full-time staff members, fairly small, with 3 permanent staff members actually recruiting over 500 poll workers for the election. 22 early voting locations will be happening for this primary and 50 election day vote centers. That's nearly double of what the NRS actually requires, and we want to ensure that there's no long lines on election day or early voting, so we go above and beyond there. Mail ballot processing, only 3 permanent staff members to process all those ballots. So we require, or ask for, voluntold, if you will, county staff to help us out. Up to 25 staff members in the mail ballot operation at the height of our operation will be working for us there from the county. We utilize a tool called Microsoft Teams Shift, and that allows us not to have to specifically manage a calendar. They come in and they'll sign up for a shift, a county worker, and they'll work blocks of 4-hour times. I was asked to present on recruitment some of the challenges and opportunities. However, my staff is very new. I think there's only one person that had been around from the 2018 to 2022 cycle. Therefore, we didn't have a lot of information here to present to you. But what we do have is the positions of poll workers. We definitely have, as Mark and my previous colleague mentioned, vote center managers, assistant managers, greeters, poll pad operators, clerks, ballot runners, supply runners, technical runners. Our county is very diverse. It's a very large county to support. And then around that time, from what I'm understanding from the people that were here, we had very limited institutional knowledge to carry on from election to election. But we did have a strong base of returning poll workers, which was great. So we roughly have about 7 poll workers per vote center location. Some of the recruitment challenges and opportunities in 2024, that's when I came to Washoe County. Some of the challenges were the presidential preference primary, and that was prior. I mean, I hadn't been there at that point in time yet, but it was difficult to recruit bipartisan teams. So each vote center, we have bipartisan teams of Democrats, Republicans, nonpartisan folks. But for the reason of the caucus going on, I guess a lot of the Republicans did not help out so much in the presidential preference primary to volunteer for us to work. Also, due to the new election format, they had already pre-existing commitments from voters who would normally, or poll workers who normally work for us. They ended up having vacation schedules and just not being so much aware of the PPP that was scheduled. Internally, we had some overlapping of recruitment with training and reducing some of our efficiencies internally. And we had a higher than normal poll worker dropout rate. Again, this was due to some of the harassment that was happening to poll workers at the time and some of the political rhetoric that was going on. Some of the opportunities, we pay well above minimum wage. It's competitive if you want to come work for us for a few weeks. We also increase reliance on student workers that proved effective. We kind of started a high school program to have student workers work election day for us, high school students. And we also heard the opportunity from the public that they were a little bit scared or nervous to work election day or the election. Therefore, we implemented this thing called panic buttons. So at each one of our vote centers on early voting and election day, each site manager has a panic button that they can press. And when they press that button, it automatically calls local authorities and it geolocates that specific location. And so they would arrive within minutes if that panic button is pressed. Some of the compensation that we have for early voting, we pay a manager $18 an hour, assistant manager $17, and the rest of the staff $16. For election day folks, it's a stipend at $225, assistant manager $200, and an associate at $175. We also pay for training, $35 for training, $25 actually to set up the election equipment for election eve, if you will. And we pay runners $16 an hour plus mileage reimbursement and $5 a day if they're using their own cell phone. Some of the recruitment challenges in 2026, early voting election day recruitment impacted by our vote center. So after the 2024 general election, we lost all of our 79 vote centers, meaning all the contracts expired after the general election, which was great because we had a blank slate to go out and get new ones and look at the community and see, did we place these in the right locations? However, in the 2024 primary, the DOJ came and surveyed 10 of our 55 election day locations for ADA compliance, and we failed all 10 locations. Therefore, we had a settlement with the DOJ, and we decided a renewed focus on ADA compliance was very necessary. In doing so, we were looking for 100% compliant locations for this election, this cycle. And unfortunately, we weren't finding hardly any. Very, very hard to find. Time was slipping away as recruitment needed to happen. So we can't recruit without assigning people to a location. Therefore, enough was enough. Election must go on. So I decided to actually work with our voting system vendor and put in the first ever state of Nevada ADA curbside voting program. How am I able to do that? Title II of ADA says I can modify a location as long as I have curbside voting in the state, in my county. So to assist voters who can't get out of their car, had a heart attack, a stroke, we don't ask why, we're not supposed to ask why, but we are allowing folks to vote in the comfort of their vehicle, because most of the problems is the path of travel to get into the vote center, and that's why we failed a lot of the DOJ survey. So we're allowing them to vote in the comfort of their car. It's no different than walking in or wheelchairing into a location. They'll still have to check in, they still have to register, etc. We verify who they are, and then they would cast a ballot right there on the spot, and we will put that in a secrecy for them, and we will allow them to we will walk in their ballot for them and actually cast it in the vote center on their behalf. So by implementing this program, we were able to start signing vote center contracts, all the ones that had expired, and meet our timelines. Also, some of the challenges, we had an aging population in Washoe County, and we're using more and more technology in elections. And so that does prove to be some challenges. Not all aging folks have a problem with technology, but there are some. We also have late outreach resulting in worker unavailability. Again, preset plans because we were delayed on getting vote center contracts, so people moved on with their life. So we had to kind of dig deeper in our election database to find poll workers. Again, difficult to recruit Republican poll workers in the primary. I've been working with the chair of the Republican Party trying to find additional poll workers, site managers, assistant site managers for our teams, and they are definitely trying to help. And then we had, unfortunately, minimal high school recruitment this cycle, but in 2026, the November general, we will push very hard to have the high school folks come and work for us. We did that in 2024, November, and we had, I think, 20 high school students come work for us, and it was very fruitful. Recruitment, so it's not just we recruit poll workers at our 72 vote centers. We actually recruit our own Washoe County staff to assist in carrying out the election through mail ballot processing duties and election day duties. And what you see on the screen is some of the stipends or enhancements to participate, if you will. So employees who work for us directly for registered voters, who work 8 to 15 hours, earn 4 hours of personal leave. 16 to 24 hours, they earn 12 hours of personal leave, and anybody who works 25 hours or more for us will earn 16 hours of personal leave. We also now have changed our policy to pay overtime. Prior to this year, we were saying to the departments, if you're going to let your staff come work for us, but they work over, you're going to cover their overtime. Well, that didn't work out well, and we didn't have a high participation. Now we, the registered voters, will cover their overtime, so we're getting more and more people signing up, which is fantastic. I also have met with 11 of the department heads of Washoe County and asked, please participate, please help me out. And the reason I did is because the elected officials, there's a lot of elected officials on ballot this specific election, and therefore in the past we are not able to use their staff if they had competition. Looking through the ballot now, we know who filed for candidacy. There's not a lot of competition for certain Washoe County elected positions. Therefore, we will be able to utilize some of their staff if they're uncontested on the ballot. So that's great news. As I mentioned, we only have a staff of 3 dedicated people working mail ballot processing. So without this internal help, we really would struggle. I mean, we already work a lot of overtime, but we really wouldn't be able to pull off the election without them. So training over the years, this is one of the questions I was asked to present. Again, we didn't have a ton of information on this, but from what we could glean, there was no major challenges on training from 2018 to 2022. It was well organized, efficiently organized, and conducted centrally. In 2024, due to VRIMS, which was great, it's a great system. However, it was kind of put in a little bit more last minute, and therefore we had a lot of changes up until early voting and election day, which led to quite a lot more supplemental information that we needed to kind of hand out and give to all the workers at the vote centers last minute. We also were we were addressing a 30% vacancy rate in my department at the time, which led to a lot of staff burnout, people quitting, finding other jobs. We also had a lack of trainers. We only had one trainer to do 32 trainings over a month period. So every day they were training, they were losing their voice, etc. Therefore, what I did is engaged HR, our own internal staff, from the HR department of the county, and said, I need your help. You already have trainers, can you help us train some of these folks? And so they are engaging with us now and helping us train for 2026. So in 2024, again, there was a lot of major technical challenges that came about, and we are just hoping in 2026 is going on that less and less, as Mark said, that system, the VREM system, is never fully going to be baked, but it is better and better every year, and therefore less changes coming into an election is better for our staff and the state and the voters. Training challenges in 2026 due to changes in VREMs. Moving also to new voting equipment, such as about marking devices and the vote center scanners. We had to redo our election worker manual. So we have a 160 plus page election worker manual. We had to take new screenshots, new pictures, new updates to train all these new folks on how to utilize that equipment. We have about 35 training days, and so a lot of the folks that want to work for us already have day jobs. Therefore, we have to train sometimes at night, weekends, and we have makeup labs for folks who didn't really understand the material or want a refresher. We do that on the weekends also to have makeup labs. Again, I mentioned new voting equipment. We also have a new 1 hour ADA video because, again, the DOJ settlement. So we wanted to put our best foot forward, ensure that not only do we, staff, know, but all the election workers and poll workers know that ADA is a very needed for voting hot topic, and that we want to provide as much ADA compliance as possible for the voters of Washoe County. We had procedural updates and occurring after the trainings. Still, right now, today, that there are still VREMS changes that we are making, and so our training material is changing slightly day to day as needed. Our initial trainings were a little unstructured. We have new employees coming in that have never really trained before, and therefore the little unstructured, but we quickly, I sat in the first few days and course corrected to ensure that those trainers were actually giving the right information for all Washoe County vote centers. And another thing was our training facility readiness was uncertain. So what does that mean? We have only one training facility. Unfortunately, we're not Clark County and have all those resources, but we had one training facility to train all these poll workers, so 500 poll workers. So it was under construction at the time, promised to kind of be ready. Unfortunately, those deadlines were not met, so we had to move our training to different locations for the first week or so, and now we're in full swing. That training room has been built out, has all the right resources, big enough. We can train lots of people at one time, so that's fantastic. On top of that, I'm not sure if you've heard, but the Washoe County Register of Voters in 2027/2028, we will be moving our headquarters to a brand new facility, new headquarters, new warehouse, and also a new training facility inside that warehouse. So in 2028, we'll be more geared up and have better training facility for us that's dedicated to register our voters. Some of the rewards and recognitions for 2026. We are creating a brand new program it's a lapel pin for poll workers to recognize that they worked that election. We will be giving that out to all poll workers and staff. And so that's going to, one, create a reward to them, two, make them want to come back. The county that I used to work in prior to this in Southern California did an excellent job of this and made sure they had a specific pin for every single election they worked at. And what did they do? They put that around their lapel or their lanyards, and they wanted to show the pride of working each election and how many elections they had worked in. So that brings back the same people over and over. We do pay well, I think, and so we also increased our pay for the training day since we added more time to training. Since we have more technical equipment, we need more time to train. I mentioned the county staff incentives. We pay overtime and personal leave. And one of the things that a suggestion from Commissioner Hill of Washoe County said, you know, we recognize we can't pull off elections without a lot of these city locations, rec centers, Save Marts, etc., grocery stores. We should have a Patriot Award for businesses that actually volunteer their vote centers, because we don't pay anything to them. Therefore, we're trying to put a program together that for a Patriot Award where these businesses can come, receive an award from the commissioners and myself as a thank you to them for being patriots in the community. With that, I'd answer any question you might have. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Registrar McDonald, for the presentation. One question I have, do you think you will have enough poll workers for the upcoming primary of the general in Washoe County?
Andrew McDonald, Registrar of Voters for the record. Thank you, Vice Chair Orenshall. Yes, we do. We are on track right now with recruiting to have enough poll workers for this primary election. We're very fortunate to have a very long database, a very deep database of folks that have worked for us in the past, and we are calling all those folks, and we are, I would say, roughly about 85-90% totally recruited at this point.
Okay, thank you very much, Registrar. With that, members, I'd like to go to Carson City first. See if Senator Daly and Assemblymember Dickman have any questions, and I'll come back to Las Vegas. Any questions in Carson City? Not seeing any. Then we'll come back down to Las Vegas. Assemblymember Mosca.
Thank you. Not a question, just a comment. I just wanted to thank you for all you do. Assemblymember Dickman and I got to do a tour last year, and I think it's very different each county, but it was helpful to see how it works there. And just thank you for everything that you and your staff do.
Thank you, Assemblymember Mosca.
Yes, thank you very much, Assemblymember Mosca. Any additional questions, members down here in Las Vegas? Okay, I'm not seeing any. Thank you very much, Registrar McDonald. Thank you for all your hard work and the excellent presentation.
Thank you, Vice
With
Chair
that,
Orenshall and committee members.
Thank you so much. With that, I'd like to turn it over to our Elko County Clerk, Rebecca Plunkett. Thank you so much for joining us and making that long trip to Carson City to present today. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Rebecca Plunkett. I'm from Elko County Clerk, and I appreciate the opportunity to speak to you guys today. I just want to introduce myself. I was appointed in 2023 as Elko County Clerk. I've been working in elections since 2013, so I have some knowledge of what's been going on in Elko County. I'm also an Elko County native. I wanted to give some stats on all the poll recruitment we've had in Elko County. I started in 2014. I had some earlier data, but it wasn't as good as 2014. I just want to let you know that we have 41 precincts in Elko County. We also have, as of now, we have 9 election day polling locations and 3 early voting locations as of now. When we first started back in 2014, we didn't have as many polling locations. We have grown in the last few years, so which is very helpful. We also are a big county. We're like the second one in Nevada. We also have 3 borders towns that we deal with for election day. We have the Waihi reservations that borders Idaho. We have Jackpot, Nevada, that also borders Idaho, and then West Wendover that borders Utah. And actually all of those 3 locations are in a different time zone, so that has a little bit of a challenge as well as a mountain time zone. And then with Wendover and Jackpot and Owaihi, that's about like a 2.5 hour drive from Elko County. So some of the logistics of getting poll workers or getting the results back from those locations, or some of us were waiting for a few hours for those results at night. In Elko County, we have training subjects. The subjects are the HR. We do HR orientations. All of our workers go through the HR process. We have to be Elko County employees, so that takes a little bit. We are the group workers are polling place rules. We do our poll pads, check-ins, regular voters, same-day registrations, provisional ballots, observers, and then we do signature verification video from the Secretary of State's office. We also have the mail ballot drop-off clerk, and then we also have somebody for our line to just keep our line going on our busier locations. Our team leaders are the same as their group workers, but they also do the opening and closing of the polls on the voting machines, the opening and closing of the polls on our tabulator that we received this year, the verifying the seals of the machines, and making sure all the voted ballots in the ballot boxes are surrender ballots, and all of our results are in a transport bag, so they can be transported to the clerk's office at the end of the day. I wanted to also let you know that on our smaller locations, we may only have three poll workers working the site in our like rural areas, like in Jigs or in Carlin and Wells. And so it's really nice to get those workers out there. I wanted to, this year we're having some election worker challenges. Our pay is low. I am in the process of right now working with our county commissioners to try to up our pay to help get more recruitment for the general election. Some of our workers have faced some harassment or threats, and so they didn't want to work anymore from the last election. Many of our workers are older, and so it's kind of, they've decided they didn't want to do it anymore because of the technology that we have as well. I know other counties are facing the same. There are actually some communities that have little community involvement or interests. There's some polling locations that we are trying really hard to try to get poll workers, and so if we can't get them, we're going to have to work on getting some extra poll workers to travel into our more rural areas, like up in Owyhee or in Windover, to get those poll locations to be staffed. Our HR requirements can be complicated. Everything is online for their HR between the application process and their onboarding process, including getting all their forms signed for the IRS and everything. So that may take time, and not everybody has access to computers, and not everybody has access to the internet. So some of them just don't want to have to go through that process. The training also takes time. We are starting training actually in the next week for our poll workers. We do at least 3 or 4 hours, and some of them are not able to do 3 or 4 hours during that time. We try to do it at least different days so they can do it, but it's not everybody can do that. And of course, the hours on election day are long. And so for working for 12 hours a day, or even 14 or 16 sometimes, is a long day for them. I just wanted to say, Elko County, I lost my train of thought. You guys have any questions?
Clerk Plunkett, thank you so much for the presentation. Thank you again for making the long trip to Carson City to present and to bring us an update on what's going on in Elko. One question I have, and then I'll go to members. Are you planning on having polling places on any of the tribal lands in Elko County this year? And do you think you have the staffing for those polling places?
Thank you for the question. Rebecca Plunkett, Elko County Clerk. We do have 2 tribal locations that are going to have polling locations up in Owyhee Reservation Colony, and then over in Elko. We have an Indian colony in Elko. We have early voting days, and then we'll have a ballot drop box for election day. Owyhee has 3 early voting days and election day drop off. The other tribes and colonies opted out this year.
Thank you very much, Clerk Plunkett. Thanks for that information. I'm going to go to Carson City to see if Senator Daley or Assembly Member Dickman have any questions.
I think we're good. Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair.
Thank you, Assembly Member Dickman. I'll come back down here to Las Vegas. Members, any questions? Assembly Member Mosca.
I wanted to thank you so much, Clerk, for all that you do. Sorry to hear about how hard it is to recruit. Just wanted to know, is that a typical for all the rurals? Is it just the Elko? Just for context, would love to know if that's a general thing that we're seeing in the rurals.
Rebecca Plunkett, Elko County Clerk. I think for some of the smaller counties, there are. I just have noticed the past few years with poll recruitment, with everything going on in the world, it's really difficult to get some poll workers.
Any follow-up, Assemblymember Mosca? Or members, any additional questions? They're not seeing any. Thank you so much, Clerk Plunkett, for your presentation. Have a safe drive back to Elko. Thank you. Were there any questions for Deputy Secretary Woloshyn, who presented? Members down south or up north? No. Thank you, Deputy Secretary Woloshyn, for your excellent presentation. We really appreciate it. It was very informative. Is there? Oh yes, Assemblymember Mosca. That's a question. Thank you, Deputy
Sorry,
Secretary.
Mr. Vice Chair. Sorry to take up so much airtime, but there was a great article in the Las Vegas Sun about Mr. Woloshyn, so I will encourage everyone to check it out.
Thank you very much, Assemblymember Mosca. I appreciate that, and thank you, Deputy Secretary Woloshyn. Really appreciate your presentation, all your hard work. With that, not seeing any other questions, the last item on our agenda is public comment. I will start down here in Las Vegas. If anyone wishes to make public comment, please come forward. We are limiting public comment to 2 minutes per speaker. I don't see anyone down here in Las Vegas. Up in Carson City, is there anyone wishing to make public comment? I don't see anyone in Carson City. Broadcasting, is there anyone on the phone lines who wishes to make public comment?
Thank you, Vice Chair. If you would like to provide public comment, please press *9 now to take your place in the queue.
Good afternoon. This is Oscar Williams again. I want to alert your attention to a recent change through regulation of NAC 293338, regulation R090-25RP1, section 7 does a radical change on what is otherwise regarded as the hardening of the election system against cyber attack. Where the language was before, an electronic device that is used to verify signatures on mail ballots may only be connected to a computer network for maintenance and support. For maintenance and support has been removed to R090-25RP1 section 7. I think we're going the wrong way on cybersecurity by doing this. If you're not aware of this, please be aware, and I would recommend that that be repealed by this committee. Moving on, I have a concern about, I go to the polls, I get a paper ballot, and by the way, this is a wonderful thing that we have paper ballots at the polls now. The problem is, the counting board is required to count the paper ballots after all ballots have been accounted for. The problem is with the precinct scanner tabulator that I am forced to use, even though I haven't been asked if I want to use it, it digitizes the ballot. So what the county board get is not the paper ballot. The precinct scanner tabulator violates NRS 293365. Furthermore, I believe it also infringes on, well, Mr. McDonald just explained the wonders of curbside voting, and that the voter can hand their ballot off to the election worker. And by the way, he mischaracterized cast. Casting a ballot is the marking of a ballot, not handing it off to an election worker who then brings it into for processing. That's handing off a ballot, not casting a ballot. But here he's explained how there's a unique system for somebody at the curb. If that person was to walk inside, they would not be afforded that same opportunity. All I want is to have the county board count my paper ballot. I don't want to scan and tabulate my own ballot. There's no provision in law that provides that, and I do believe it violates the law. I think that needs to be looked at. Give me a ballot box. Have the ballots treated like every other mail ballot and provisional ballot that is eventually transported by a ballot bag to central processing. That's a unified statewide standard of counting that is my right as a voter, and I'd like to see that happen. Thank you for your time. Those are my comments. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Mr. Williams. Broadcasting, is there anyone else on the line who wishes to make public comment?
You have no more callers on the line at this time.
Thank you very much. Thank you, members, and thank you to our clerks, our registrars, our Secretary of State, Deputy Secretary Woloshyn. Thank you for all the tremendous presentations. With that, members, we are adjourned.